30 seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the place show yet not overly ostentatious studios of CBS Sports Radio here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor of 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on in to a Friday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all the great local CBS Sports Radio affiliates, Sirius XM, channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and of course streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/CBS Sports Radio. 855-212-4CBS is number to jump on in, 855-212-4227. You could always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter, at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. Whole lot to do today. Got Ryan Botcher, got Moist Mike, rocking and rolling all the way up until 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. We'll have some guests join us along the way. Former Louisville player, now works for the ACC Network, Luke Hancock, will stop by 40 minutes from now. And then the former coach at Memphis and Georgia Tech, Josh Pastner, is going to stop by at 4:20 p.m. Eastern, 1:20 p.m. Pacific today. I got to start off with the Sweet 16 from last night. So when we said goodbye to you yesterday, I told you UConn was going to win and UConn was going to roll against San Diego State. No surprise there. I told you that Illinois, in what could have been a sloppy game, but it was going to be a close game, was going to win up against Iowa State. No surprise there. I told you Arizona was going to beat Clemson. That didn't happen. Big surprise there. And give all the credit to the Tigers of Clemson, and Chase Hunter was unbelievable in that game. And I was one of the few people that were actually on Nate Oates and Alabama Roll Tide up against UNC. And we did see Alabama find a way to be the better team late. And you saw Grant Nelson just take over the game, as Alabama has a bunch of transfers. And Grant Nelson, if you didn't know about him now, you did find out about him last night. Obviously, if you didn't know about him before then, you found out about him last night, the transfer from North Dakota State. And Nate Oates, right? They had a good team last year with Brandon Miller and that entire story, unfortunate story. And now you know so many newer players are in the program. And it's like, oh, where the heck did this guy come from? And it's just transfer portal, the natural nature of that. And Bama is now one win away from going to the Final Four. So I think the takeaways from last night, you could push aside Illinois beating Iowa State. You could push aside UConn beating San Diego State. But in a tournament that really doesn't have a lot of big names, that really doesn't have a lot of matchups that we were really zeroing in on, when that bracket did come out, if you are a college basketball fan and you don't just parachute in for this 3-week stretch, a lot of people looked at that and they said, let me take a glance at the lower left bracket, and I see a possibility of UNC meeting up against Arizona. And the reason why you wanted to see UNC and Arizona is because Caleb Love, who was originally going to transfer from UNC to Michigan, and then something happened with certain credits wouldn't transfer over. I don't even know if that is the true story, but that's what they at least told us. He then ended up with Arizona. So you had Caleb Love, and Tommy Lloyd has done a spectacular job the first 3 years in the regular season. And then come the postseason, it's been disappointment, disappointment, and disappointment. So here is Arizona again as a high seed. They're a number 2 seed. They have Caleb Love. And a lot of us were hoping to see Caleb Love go up against his former teammates in Armando Bacot and R.J. Davis. And both of those teams, right? It'd be one thing if one team ruined the party, but both of those teams ended up squandering away that opportunity last night. And you see a trend with some of these really good teams that go down in the NCAA tournament this year. And it's bizarre. And I've never seen teams just blow opportunities like this in this tournament. You look at Kentucky when they lost. They got stuffed at the rim on a dunk. Could not pass the basketball. They were throwing it out of bounds. Auburn, when they lost, they were missing layup after layup after layup. It was crazy. It drove me bonkers. And you go back to Arizona losing to Clemson and UNC losing to Alabama. You had Armando Bacot. He missed the dunk right at the basket. You also had Withers, who is a 20% three-point shooter. You're down by 1. As a little over a minute left in the game, whatever it was. And you take your first three-point attempt shot of the game in that moment. That's the best shot selection you could get. You know, I was dumbfounded by that. I was mystified. I got it. He was wide open. But even when he was wide open from 3, he looked like Carlton in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when he takes the half-court shot. And it's like the dramatic music, and then it's not even close, and then you hear, and his team lost. Like, that shot selection last night made no sense. And the most offensive offense was Arizona. I give Clemson credit because at the end of the game, they were the better team for the jump. And at halftime, you knew that was going to be a dogfight when they were up 39-31. But Clemson was begging for a 3-4 minute stretch where they couldn't score for Arizona to take control of that game. And it was missed layup after layup after layup by Arizona. How many damn layups were you going to miss? And not only that, there were stretches, because you couldn't make layups, and I'm sitting there from my couch, well, how many layups are they going to miss, where they were just taking these three-pointers. And I know Arizona's a good three-point shooting team, but how many wide open three-point shots were the Wildcats going to miss? So it stinks that for UNC, this is how R.J. Davis's career comes to a close. And you look at Arizona, we get deprived of seeing Caleb Love potentially go to the Elite Eight, and then we were hoping for UNC to be there to get that matchup. But it is stunning that last night, you look back at the numbers, R.J. Davis, 4-20 from the field, 0 of 9 from 3. And then you look at Caleb Love, he was also 0 of 9 from 3. And him from the floor last night, Caleb Love, it wasn't a situation where it was all that spectacular. So it's just a day where it was just so unfortunate what did transpire. Caleb Love was 5 of 18 from the field last night. But you have that scenario play on out between Arizona and Clemson, and then UNC and Alabama. And it's just one of those games where for UNC, how does a star player like Bacot miss that dunk? How does R.J. Davis miss every three-point shot in the game? And then in Arizona-Clemson, it was just poor shot attempt after poor shot attempt. And then when they drive the ball, they couldn't make a layup. So that's the biggest takeaways. And I hate to be so negative, but that's the stunning takeaway from last night. It was a blown opportunity by UNC. It was a blown opportunity by Arizona as well. And the crazy part was just the poor shot selection and then just how close they could get to the basket without putting the ball in the basket. At one point in that game, I tweeted out Arizona and Clemson. I tweeted out, is Arizona allergic to the basket? Because it was amazing how close they got to the basket. And then when they got to the basket, they couldn't put the ball in the hoop. So a fun first night of the Sweet 16. And we will now have 4 more tickets to punch in the Elite Eight. And all those games will come your way later this evening. NC State and Marquette, Gonzaga and Purdue, Duke and Houston. And then in addition to that, Creighton and Tennessee. But Samter, I didn't know this about you, and I learned this about you last night. I know that you lived for a very long time in Arizona, and that's where you got your start of your radio career, where, if memory serves me right, you went to a radio remote, or maybe the radio remote was at the restaurant you were working at, and you were talking to one of the people there, and then somehow you got in at the radio station, and that is how the great, spectacular, golden radio career of Moist Mike, Big Mike, CBS, Michael Samter, a man of many names, did commence. But I saw a tweet last night that, and usually Samter, I wouldn't say gets giddy about sports, because I do feel like you have a very tough sports fandom, but you were basking in the loss and another choke job of Arizona. So outside of just living in the area, why were you so happy? Why were you like a fat kid in a candy store just going nuts when Arizona loses? And I don't think you're a Clemson fan. So what happened there? Well, what's the background story there?
I mean, very briefly, I lived in Arizona right near ASU. I worked for a newspaper that covered Arizona State sports. So I was a Sun Devil. You know, my college, Boston University, didn't really have much of a basketball team. No football program outside of hockey. That's all they had.
Unbiased coverage there, it sounded like.
So I had to adopt a team, and yeah, of course it was biased. I'm all about the forks up Sun Devils, baby. And I have so many friends still in Arizona who are Arizona fans, big Wildcat fans, and they can talk trash all throughout the basketball season. But lately they've been able to talk trash because of your boy Jed Fish on the football season. That was the one thing that the Sun Devils had over Arizona was we had football over them. They had basketball over us. Mm-hmm. So every year, no matter how good ASU was, even when Harden was there and ASU was really good, no matter how good ASU was, Arizona always got farther. Arizona always did better. They won championships. They went to Final Fours. So for me, when I go to
Pastner was on that 2000 team.
There you go. So whenever I look at the NCAA tournament, the two things that make me happiest are one shiny moment and watching those damn Wildcats bear the hell down, baby. Bear down, forks up, baby. That's all I got to say.
So you look at the last 3 years under Tommy Lloyd. They were 33-4, right? And they ended up losing in the Sweet 16 to Houston, and they were supposed to have a championship quality team. Then last year as a 2 seed, they lost to Princeton, and that started the Princeton run into the Sweet 16. And then this year, you looked at that part of the region, they were a sexy Final Four pick. They were one of my Final Four picks. I didn't have them beating UConn to advance to the championship game, but they were one of my Final Four picks because you just didn't like anyone really in that bracket. Like even UNC entering this tournament, I didn't love. But I thought at least one of those teams would have been there. One of those teams would have found a way to meet up and be on the verge of going to the Final Four. But the fact that none of them got there is kind of crazy.
So here's a question I have for you. We've talked a lot about John Calipari. Now, he's been at Kentucky for a very long time, and he's failed many times over and over and over, despite having top teams and top recruiting classes.
Yeah.
Now, Hubert Davis, his first year at North Carolina, he went to the Final Four. He ended up beating Coach K.
Yeah, they lost to UConn though. They lost to Kansas in the championship.
Correct, but they beat. They ended Coach K's career at Duke in the Final Four. They went to the championship game and lost. Last year, they were the number 1 overall seed or the number 1 overall ranking team preseason. They were number 1 throughout a lot of the season, lost 7 of the last 11 games, and missed the NCAA tournament. This year, they were a 1 seed and Sweet 16
so you're going the Hubert Davis angle.
So my question is, at what point do we start saying Hubert Davis? Like, at what point do we start saying, okay, Hubert Davis, there's a little bit of mounting pressure on him. His first year, great first year, but, I mean, he's taking over someone else's talent. Second year misses the tournament, despite being preseason number 1. Third year, 1 seed, Sweet 16 exit. When does the pressure start to pick up for Hubert Davis?
So, here's the thing. I'm not really irate with the UNC loss last night. Like, don't get me wrong. You're a 1 seed, you lose to a 4 seed, but Alabama, we always knew they could score points. It was, would their defense ever register? And I know 89-87 doesn't seem like a defensive game, but when they needed to, Grant Nelson stepped up in a big way. Like, I can't slam Hubert Davis, necessarily the coaching job in this one last night, when Withers takes a dumb 3-point shot, and then R.J. Davis didn't show up in the game and was 0 of 9 from 3. You know, R.J. Davis hits 1 3-pointer last night. I know it's tricky to do this. Alabama doesn't win the game. So I'm not there yet in saying that he's on the hot seat or you gotta freak out. But you know what the standard is at UNC? It's to win championships. But I do think the first year gets him off to a good start. Then it got rocky. And then he was able to reel it back in because, you know, a lot of people heading into this year wasn't expecting UNC to be the number 1 seed. I didn't think they'd be a number 1 seed in this NCAA tournament. And here we are where they were number 1 seed, and it was disappointing. But I look at last night more so of a Tommy Lloyd conversation. Because Tommy Lloyd has had 3 great regular seasons. 3 great regular seasons. And all 3 in the postseason have been disappointing. But I will take your conversation one little step further. I do think tonight is a big night for Jon Scheyer. Because like you just said, Hubert Davis, right, replaces Roy Williams at UNC. Jon Scheyer, who was on the staff, replaces Coach K at Duke. Duke last year was a sexy pick, and they went home early. Now Duke has a chance to punch their ticket to the Elite Eight. And I know everyone, if you're not picking UConn, a lot of people are picking Houston. But I think Duke tonight is alive. I actually like Duke outright tonight. And I know Houston, they survived up against A&M. They had the 10-point lead, and they blew it. The kid hit the great shot at the buzzer. And then they were able to pull away with basically like no one left on their roster because of all the foul outs in overtime. But I do believe Duke has a good chance to win. And you got the big kid in Filipowski as well. I would think tonight this is a big pressure moment. This is a moment where Jon Scheyer could show everybody, I got what it takes to do so in March. And I'll be curious to see how the Duke Blue Devils do respond. But last night, Arizona and UNC, that were the moments. Those were the 2 teams where even though I had Alabama beating UNC, where you are disappointed because of Arizona losing, but really more so how both those teams did lose. With the poor shot selection, getting stuffed at the rim, and just not being able to hit layups. It is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. UConn continues their dominant ways. We get into the new face of college basketball, Danny Hurley, next.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
The Zach Gelb Show is on the air across the nation on CBS Sports Radio. Here's Zach Gelb.
All righty, so on the left side of the bracket last night, we did see Alabama and Clemson punch their ticket to the Elite Eight. We also got to see UConn and Illinois do the same. Tonight, we will see Houston and Duke, NC State and Marquette. We'll also see Gonzaga go up against Purdue. And then the game I'm most excited for, the Blue Jays of Creighton going up against the Volunteers of Tennessee. We will know what our Elite Eight is coming up later tonight. And then we do have the Elite Eight games on Saturday and Sunday. And then Final Four will be punched every ticket by the end of Sunday. And we will have your Final Four coming to you on Saturday and then the championship game of Monday. And we will actually be out for 3 shows in Phoenix, Arizona, where Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week, getting you set and all geared up for the Final Four. But I continue to just look at UConn, and we know that Danny Hurley has brought the Huskies back. If you don't think UConn isn't a blue blood, I don't know what you watched under the great coach Calhoun. And then also winning that championship again last year just further enhances their blue blood status. And heck, they've won a championship already even before last year, even without Calhoun, when Kevin Ollie was able to win that championship. And then there was a lot that happened with Kevin Ollie, and now Kevin Ollie is the interim head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. So this UConn program is just a unit. This UConn program is just a factory. They are a force, and they just keep on pumping out W's. And I still don't see how a team beats them in this tournament. Illinois will give them a run. There is no doubt about it. Illinois is a better defensive team than what people give them credit for. And you got the two best offenses technically in the country with Illinois going up against UConn. And Domask has been a good transfer for Illinois. You have the whole story with Terrence Shannon, where he has a pending rape trial coming up. And this is something with Terrence Shannon that he's not speaking to the media. He's been advised by his attorneys to not speak to the media. And this goes back to, I want to say, December, where he was suspended for a bit. I was reading I did not know this part, how he got back onto the court. It was through a technicality in the courts through NIL that was able to get him back on a basketball court. And since he is reinstated and eligible to play, you know what happens in sports, even if it may not be the right thing, with the charge and the serious nature of what someone is accusing him, he's getting an opportunity to play. And I'll tell you this, and I'm not the only one saying this, and it's tough to ignore what I just said, but from a basketball-only standpoint, Terrence Shannon, he is the best player between the rosters of UConn and Illinois. Now, it doesn't mean Illinois is going to win the game, but I look at this matchup for UConn, and I still think UConn is going to win. But if UConn, let's say, smothers Illinois, and they beat them by 10-plus points, like last year, UConn's closest game in the tourney was like 15 points. Is there going to be any game that they win in this tourney that is less than 10 points? I can't say so. Even with how much respect I have for Brad Underwood, and I love Brad Underwood, and he's done a phenomenal job at Illinois, and now they finally got to the Sweet 16, and now they're in the Elite Eight, and I liked them last night to beat Iowa State. I don't see how anyone in a sober state can seriously give you an explanation why UConn is not going to win it all. And I get it, right? They played Stetson. They played Northwestern. They played San Diego State. This is not murderer's row with the opponents that we're looking at. Now, San Diego State wasn't the championship game last year. UConn did not shoot the ball well up against Northwestern. Stetson is a 16 seed. Well, if you say that to Purdue or if you say that to Virginia, it may elicit a different emotional response. But still, the score so far, 91-52. When you don't even shoot the ball well against Northwestern, 75-58. And last night, did it even matter? The five players that San Diego State put on the court? No, it was 82-52. So the intrigue for me tomorrow evening at 6:09 p.m. Eastern time when they throw that ball up in the air in Boston. Can Illinois, they're capable of keeping this close, but will they keep it close? And Santa, right now, I can't sit here, even with how good of a team Illinois is, right? They won a Big Ten championship. You got just tremendous, you have basically 5 forwards on a basketball court. Let's just call it what it is with the way Illinois runs. But their backcourt is the best 1-2 punch, you could argue, in the country with Domask and Shannon. And they have the best player between both teams in Shannon. I can't say, I'm not sitting here and telling you Illinois is going to win the game. And I'm not saying that UConn's not winning every game in this tournament by at least 10 points. Because they will. If Illinois can't keep this close, and I'm not saying Illinois is the second best team in this tournament, but they are a top 5 team remaining in this tournament. I just don't see who's going to be the team that actually gives UConn a run. Like, I'm not going to pick Houston. I'm not going to pick Duke. Even Purdue with their big fella in Zach Edey. I know Mark Few's a heck of a coach. Creighton's got 4 really good players in their starting 5. We know Tennessee is the SEC Player of the Year in Dalton Connect. You know, Alabama, we know they could score with anybody. And Clemson's been a phenomenal story. But as I felt this way going into the tournament, and I sit here now with part of the Elite 8 already set up, and we're still in the Sweet 16 with 4 more games tonight, I feel even better. I feel even better about UConn than I did before the tournament. And before the tournament, they were my pick to win it all. What UConn has turned into, Samter, and what they've been able to do in the last 2 years, where they won a championship last year, and they weren't even great in the regular season. Like, they weren't a sexy pick. And then this year, they were the team to beat. This year, going into the tournament, it was clear they were the best team. And so far, they've been able to just stroll through this tournament. So I hope Illinois gives them a good game. Are they capable of it? Yes. And I gave you the breakdown of why they can keep themselves in this game. But I can't sit here and say UConn isn't going to win every game in this tournament by at least 10 points. It just does not register with me, and I can't say those words into a microphone. That's how dominant they've been.
And honestly, man, like, I'm trying to go back. I'm looking at like some of the best teams over the past, of the millennium, over the past 24 years since 2000. The ones that stand out to me, like the 2000 the Blue Devils with Shane Battier, Jay Williams, Dunleavy, the Anthony Davis Kentucky Wildcats teams of 2011, the 99 Blue Devils with Elton Brand. There's a lot of good teams, but like this UConn team, they're just so well-rounded. And in a sport right now where there's not a lot of high-quality teams with veteran presence, right? Like Arizona had Caleb Love.
Yeah, but
obviously
he's transferred.
Baycott was on UNC. We know Houston has a couple upperclassmen, but we don't see it a lot. And UConn is coming off a national championship. They're smoking everybody. They're the most dominant team I've seen in college basketball, definitely since those 2011 Kentucky Wildcats. But they might be the most dominant team I've seen this millennium. Like, they are just unstoppable. They had 3 losses during the regular season, and 2 of those came in December. So, like, since December, they've lost 1 game. They're just crushing everybody. And these tournament games aren't even fun to watch. I mean, 91-52, 75-58, 82-52. I mean, it's unheard of what Danny Hurley and what this team is doing. And, like, I honestly look at it, and if they win another national title, go back-to-back, we might start talking about this team, not amongst those UCLA teams, but amongst the best teams that we've seen over the past 20, 30, 40 years.
It's kind of like what Duke did.
UNLV?
Where Duke won a championship, I think it was in 91, and then whenever they went back-to-back in the early 90s, that first team was good, but then they were better the following season. And that's what it's like here with UConn. They were good last year, obviously. No crap, they won a championship. But now they're at a different level. And I said this because we had McDermott on, Greg McDermott from Creighton, because as Samter just pointed out, they lost to Kansas on December 1st. And then after they lost to Seton Hall on December 20th, and they were 10-2, they were going into that Creighton game 24-2. Think about that. 24-2. And losing in Creighton, I thought was a good thing for them because as you kind of seen with Kentucky in the past when they were undefeated and, like, obviously you have a UConn team that's on such a long win streak. When you're on one of those ridiculously long winning streaks and you don't have a loss that happens, it just creates so much more pressure. And I get it. They didn't lose another game since after February 20th, but it's not like one of those 16, 17 game win streaks we're talking about. And I think losing that game was able to, I don't want to say humble them, but just kind of reset things. And when you have such a dominant team, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to lose a game when it's obviously not an elimination game. Like, I look back at the Patriots, and I always wonder this. And the Giants just beat them that night, and so be it. But I always do wonder if they would have lost that final game of the regular season and didn't go undefeated, in the regular season if the Super Bowl would have been different, if they would have just lost one. Because when you have just such a dominant team on such a crazy win streak, and I know UConn isn't undefeated, you just wonder, can you maintain that dominance? And that loss to Creighton, I think, did wonders for that team. All righty, Luke Hancock will join us, formerly of Louisville. Now does a great job, ESPN and the ACC Network. When we return, update time first. Here he is, the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
Well, one number one seed was bounced last night. Two more take the court tonight, trying to avoid that same fate. Purdue meets Gonzaga. The Boilermakers are on the redemption tour, trying to follow Virginia's lead of being a top seed to be upset in the first round and then winning it all the next year. The Boilermakers meet Gonzaga tonight as the road gets more difficult, but at least Matt Painter's team has some familiarity with the Zags after beating them earlier this year.
I think the experience of playing them gives you a reference point like it gives them a reference point, but I think it means very little. I don't think either team played very well in the game. I don't think either team shot very well in the game. So they had a lot of open looks that they normally make in that game. So we're going to have to do a much better job defending them. We're going to have to do a much better job of taking care of the basketball.
Houston will take on Duke tonight as well. And the first game of the night in Dallas features 11-seeded NC State and Marquette, the region's second seed, and Creighton will meet Tennessee in Detroit. Baseball this afternoon. Right now at Citi Field, the Brewers have added to their lead, now 3-1 over the Mets, bottom of the seventh, and top of the third in Philly. No score between the Braves and the Phillies. I'm Rich Ackerman.
We are CBS Sports Radio, and our Twitter handle is @CBS Sports Radio. CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Now back to the Zach Gelb Show.
Luke Hancock won a national championship at Louisville. Obviously now does a great job for ESPN and the ACC network. And he's kind enough to join us right now on the Zach Gelb Show as we have part of the Elite Eight. 4 teams already have punched their ticket to the Elite Eight. We'll see 4 more coming up later this evening. Luke, appreciate the time as always. Thanks so much. How you been?
No, I've been great. Best time of the year. Been enjoying the hoops. Games were awesome for the most part yesterday. I mean, the UConn game got a little skewed there, but I think they got to flex a little bit, show the dominance, and then every other game last night was awesome right down to the wire. So best time of the year. I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Let me start you off, though, with Louisville. They hired Pat Kelsey. When their job was open, I said you should try to go get Scott Drew. He was going to tell them no and use that as his own negotiation tactic. And then after that, I thought either Dusty May or Pat Kelsey needed to be the head coach. I don't care if Kelsey was the third choice from some of these reports, but you heard him address the reporters yesterday. What's the initial reaction of Pat Kelsey landing with your alma mater?
Well, it's funny the way you asked the question, actually, because I think the initial reaction, starting with Scott Drew and kind of going down the tiers with coaches and the way this whole search played out, I think there were a lot of Louisville fans that were pretty disappointed to get down to a coach that wasn't maybe as high profile as Scott Drew. But I got to tell you, and I'm blown away by this, going into that press conference, I thought there was no way that Pat Kelsey could win day one. And I think he got an A+. I think he did a fantastic job in that opening press conference, just showing how the energy is going to get into the program. The turning point is here. I think people really embraced his message. He's done things like just going around the city and really just trying to ingrain himself in the community. I know it seems like there's only been there a few hours, but I'm really impressed with the reception after the press conference. And I can't overstate just how it wasn't that way as soon as he was announced. He just did a great job in a situation where I thought it might be impossible to win that opening day presser.
Yeah, and any Louisville fan that's not happy with the hire, I think you just got to have more realistic expectations. You know, I don't think Pat Kelsey is a bad hire, but getting the household name to Louisville with what's happened the last few years, I just never thought was really realistic, even with the brand and the history and the tradition that program obviously has.
Yeah, you know, in the state of Kentucky right now, we might have some unrealistic college basketball fans, you know, across the way at University of Kentucky. They're not too happy with that Oakland performance. And then at Louisville, I do think that there were some unrealistic expectations. You know, people throwing Jay Wright's name out there. might as well have been throwing John Wooden's name out there. It just wasn't going to happen. But again, like, to have seen you start with that first choice in Scott Drew and have kind of work your way down. Dusty May, Richard Pitino's name gets thrown in there, and there were a lot of boosters and some influential people in town that put their name behind that. All the way to Josh Schertz at Indiana State, who just signed with St. Louis. And you get to Pat Kelsey, and he showed up and just delivered the energy, had a great first message. And I will say, I didn't know a ton about Pat Kelsey. Obviously, a great recruiter under the legendary Skip Prosser at Wake Forest, played for him at Xavier as well. Kind of from a Chris Mack school of thought, which would probably puts a bad taste in Louisville fans' mouth. But, you know, he's recruited at a high level. Jeff Teague and company at Wake, he was a part of recruiting those guys there. And from Hall of Fame coaches that work with us at ESPN to guys who have coached in the ACC to just all across college basketball, the reception with his name was very, very positive from people that were in the know. And then again, getting the fan base on board in that opening presser was so key.
Luke Hancock here with us. So you've reached the mountaintop of college athletics, winning a championship at Louisville. So you know what it's like to be able to survive in advance and then get it done on the biggest stage. But this tournament, more than any other tournament that I can remember, like you look at Auburn, you look at Kentucky, missing dunks, missing layups. Last night, you had just so many missed layups by Arizona. You have Baycott just missing that dunk as well. That, to me, has been the mystifying part of the tournament, how close some of these teams have been getting to the hoop, literally at times touching the rim, and just not being able to put the ball in the basket.
Yeah, it's one of those things. The pressure just gets bigger and bigger, and it really magnifies. I always say this, the round of 64 and round of 32 games are special. Just any NCAA tournament atmosphere is awesome. But every time you move sites, once you got that week to go back home or a few days to go back home, and then you play the following week, that's when it just ratchets up in terms of the pressure, the media exposure. You're just so locked in and focused. It can tighten some teams up. I think it's going to be really interesting, especially tonight, to see these teams that maybe haven't been tested, have been blowing teams out of the water, versus teams that have had some close games, have had an overtime game, for example, and how that kind of gets you in rhythm. You certainly saw that with NC State in the ACC tournament, winning 5 games in 5 days. Everybody was talking about these legs are going to wear out, but the tournament atmosphere is different. And it was so impressive from Kevin Keith's squad that in the second half of all those games, NC State got better. Even big DJ Burns was more impactful in overtime and in those second halves than he was through most of the matchups.
Let me get your thoughts on Clemson. Obviously, no one thought they would be in the Elite Eight before the tournament did commence. And from wire to wire last night, they were the better team up against Arizona.
Yeah, I thought their poise when Arizona made their run was really impressive. Some of the coaching changes and adjustments that Brad Brownell made going zone and kind of mixing up the man zone down the stretch was really big. But if you were locked in on the game, some of the slip screen actions and the way that they were running their offense in the half-court set, when jumpers were tough to come by, Brad Brownell did a great job of scheming his way into some layups. They had it on the out-of-bounds underneath. They had it on running Joe Girard off some screens where you're paying attention to the shooter, and the big guy slips right to the rim. The adjustments were really impressive by Clemson, and I just think them jumping out to an early lead and getting control of the game was so key. And then it was awesome to see really the X factor for the team, Chase Hunter, knocking down some shots, getting to the rim, making some big plays down the stretch.
The lack of offensive success last night for R.J. Davis was stunning, and I know in the Arizona performance you saw the same thing with the former Tar Heel in Caleb Love as well. I feel terrible for R.J. Davis with all that he's done for UNC, but what's the biggest takeaway a day later from how that Alabama and UNC game did play on out?
Yeah, I went to sleep with the same feeling I woke up with. Just how did they lose that game? They seem to be in control, and you really do feel for RJ because he's been so good all year long. That was the only game of the season he did not hit a three-point shot. He was 0 for 9, and so was Caleb Love. The first time in the NCAA tournament, 2 guys have been 0 for 9 on the same day, and it happened to be some old teammates and player of the years in their respective conferences. But you certainly feel for those guys. They've done so much for Carolina, just weren't able to cut down the nets after a tournament, an ACC tournament or an NCAA tournament. But they've done so much. They've had these legendary careers. You got to tip your hat to Alabama and Nate Oates' just plan, giving up open shots to certain guys early, but really locking in on RJ. I thought they were going to get blown out of the water early in that game, but they stuck to the plan. They made a few adjustments, and then Grant Nelson was special. It's kind of why I'm so excited for the next game. You talk about versatility. bigs that can shoot it, that can dribble, that can drive, and do a little bit of everything. It's going to be electric when P.J. Hall and Grant Nelson get the matchup in this next round.
Talking to Luke Hancock right now on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. A few years removed since we've seen Coach K and then also Roy Williams walk away. When you look at the job that Hubert Davis has done and also John Shire, he has a big game tonight, could get into the Elite Eight. Just where are you kind of at with your satisfaction level with both those two guys?
Yeah, I think UNC's body of work this year was really impressive. You know, they get a 1 seed, they win the ACC regular season title. They hadn't done that, in 5 or 6 years, I believe. So I give them a really high grade. Nobody's going to give them an A+ because you only get that grade if you cut down the nets at the end of the year. And that was certainly the expectation for this crew. But I just think it's really impressive that Hubert Davis can bring in these transfers and get them to just meld together so well. He did it with Brady Manick and that crew a couple years ago when they made it to the national championship game and just kind of ran out of gas in that last 20 minutes. He did it this year with Harrison Ingram, Cormac Ryan, Withers, all those guys. But, the next step is going to be really interesting to me. Does RJ stick around? Can they build off of this young talent? And they got a lot of it coming in. Both Carolina and Duke do. And then these are going to be the most sought after destinations in terms of transfer portal players. Carolina and Duke, those brands, what they can offer in NIL, just the exposure you get and the chance to win a championship. They're going to go out and retool and be ready to make a run next year. I have no doubt in my mind.
When we flip the page and get to tonight, I know you brought it up briefly, but I do like Marquette to beat NC State. I do like Purdue to beat Gonzaga. I think the two flip of the coins are Houston, Duke, and then Creighton, Tennessee. I kind of have changed my opinion in the last 10 hours or so, where I'm going to pick Duke to beat Houston, and I like Creighton over Tennessee. Where do you kind of lie with those two games between the Blue Devils, the Cougars, and then the Blue Jays and the Volunteers?
Yeah, for some reason I'm with you, man. I've actually changed my tune a little bit. I had Tennessee in the Final Four when I first filled my bracket out, but Creighton, I love the pieces to the puzzle. Trey Alexander's a guy that's really going to go after the defensive assignment on Dalton Connect. I got the Creighton Blue Jays winning that one. I think they're really well coached, and I love the pieces. Great point guard play. Baylor Shireman can really fill it up. An elite shot blocking defensive center. Tennessee's tough. They got a lot of veterans, but I just think shooting the basketball and just having some legit scorers, and also that matchup, Trey Alexander, Dalton Connect, I think Creighton gets it done. And then the other side, I don't know how many times Duke has to hear the narrative that physically they're going to go out there and get beat up until they decide that's not going to happen. It's never been more talked about than in this game right here, that they're going to go in there with a bunch of young guys and a bunch of soft players, and Houston's just going to backyard beat them up. I think when you tell those guys that all week long in your preparation and you just get them locked in and focused on we have to be the aggressors, that's going to favor Duke. And they have elite shot making and elite talent, one of the most talented starting fives in the country. The only thing that makes me nervous is the pace and the physicality Houston plays with. Duke, especially in this last few weeks of the season, backcourt rotation has been incredibly thin. They can bring a couple guys off the bench to help with the bigs, but backcourt guys to spell those three starters, the three-headed monster, if you will, it's going to be tough. Caleb Foster getting injured late in the season was really tough, but I'm with you. I got Duke in a close one.
Luke Hancock, before we let you run, here's the toughest question. How does anyone give UConn a game? Put your player cap on for a second.
Yeah, first of all, you got to do something with Big Donovan Clingan. He has been special, so dominant down there. They just keep coming at you. And I've been so impressed really locking into some of these half-court sets that Dan Hurley has these guys running. It is a machine. So I think you're going to have to shoot the basketball really well. You're going to have to take care of the rock. And you got to have somebody that can match up to some degree with Donovan Clingan in the middle, and you'll give yourself a chance. Although I think Tristan Newton may be playing as good as anyone in the entire country right now as the head of the snake for that crew.
He's Luke Hancock, does a great job, ESPN, ACC Network. We still acknowledge him as a national champion, even though the NCAA does all that bull crap, but I've screamed about that enough throughout the years. So, Luke.
They still gave me the MOP for whatever reason, but I guess, we'll take what we can get.
Love that. Well, anyway, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks, man. Talk soon.
You got it. There he is, Luke Hancock, joining us on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Yeah, that really did annoy me when I was looking at the bio right before we put him on, and you see the asterisk from the stupidity of the NCAA. But hey, Reggie Bush doesn't have his Heisman Trophy right now. They try to tell you that Louisville wasn't the national champion that year. My eyes tell me that I saw those things happen.
I find it interesting they didn't take away the MOP from Luke Hancock. He says he still has it, I guess.
Yeah, that's
well-deserved and earned.
If I was him, every interview I'm on, I would have that thing sitting right there just to remind everyone who won the national championship that year and give a big middle finger to the NCAA.
Next time we have him on, I'll put on the Chiron.
You got it. Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. 30 seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All righty, how we doing? Hour number 2 of our radio program. That's right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Half of the Elite Eight is set after last night's mayhem in the NCAA tournament. To no surprise, UConn has another blowout victory. They beat San Diego State by 30 points. You had a phenomenal back-and-forth game between Alabama and UNC. I was on Alabama outright last evening, so we were able to hit and cash on them. But Armando Bacot got stuffed at the rim. Withers just had a terrible three-point shot. And R.J. Davis could not hit a three-point shot as he was 0 of 9 from the field last night. And Grant Nelson was sensational. The North Dakota State transfer in the game came up with the and one late, and then also had big defensive play after big defensive play. You saw Clemson upset Arizona. Clemson was the better team at the jump. Then towards the end of the game, Clemson was just like, Arizona, can you make a layup? No. Can you make a three-point shot? No. And then Clemson had some big pull-away moments late at the end. I thought Arizona was just a stupid basketball team last night. The three-point selection was terrible. You're missing layups at the end. You couldn't even foul. And you let an offensive play for Clemson just get wide open. It was crazy. And then Illinois-Iowa State was just like a good game. It was like a solid game. I don't think there was any big takeaway. But you just know the 1-2 punch in that backcourt for Illinois is just absolutely sensational with Shannon and Domask. And now we'll see if Illinois has what it takes to, I don't even want to say win, but just give UConn a run and give UConn a game. Like Samter, let me ask you this. Illinois, Big Ten champion. Illinois is going into the Sweet 16. I thought they were one of the 5 best teams remaining out of the 16. Like they were a top 5 team. What do you think the spread is? Last night, it was 11.5, 12.5. UConn national championship rematch against San Diego State. What do you think the early line is on tomorrow evening's Elite Eight matchup between the Fighting Illini and the Huskies of UConn?
It's definitely still double digits. I'm going to go 10.5.
Definitely.
It's got to be.
Positive.
UConn's won every game by 30 points, and they're not slowing down. I like Illinois. I'm saying 10.5.
It's 8.5 is the early line.
I'm surprised by that. And listen, I'm glad because Illinois is a really good team. And Illinois deserves that credit. But
you know what that tells me? Now, this is just from my dumb interpretation of gambling. Because sometimes I will give you my dumb interpretation of gambling and my feel, and it will get interpreted by people. Oh, that was no pun intended there. That was not an Ohtani jab or anything. But it will get interpreted by people that actually gamble a lot. They'll be like, oh, you have no clue what you're talking about. I think that is Vegas actually feeling confident that the Illini are going to give them a game. Because what is every Tom, Dick, and Harry's kind of takeaway today? And I always try to look at the lines in gambling on what the average person would say, someone that doesn't watch a lot, but they just want to have some skin in the game and they want to get some action on the game. I think the average fan's going to go into this game and just say UConn's going to wipe the floor with Illinois. And I think that is Vegas begging everyone.
They're trying to entice people to bet on UConn.
To bet UConn. Yeah. And it's weird that Vegas would challenge UConn, and I get it. That's a fair line with the team that Illinois is and the way that they could score the basketball, and they're big down low with Hawkins and everything, and you got Shannon, you got Domask, but at 8.5, like if you would have told me that line was your number 12.5, all right, maybe I would think about plussing the points. But at 8.5, it seems so obvious. You got to lay the number. And usually when something seems so obvious in gambling, the opposite does happen. So my early feel on that game after seeing the line is that Vegas is anticipating, not that necessarily UConn will lose, but that this is going to be a close game with about 5 minutes to go.
I even said it yesterday. The 11.5 with San Diego State felt so low to me.
It was easy money.
It was easy money. So if 11.5
now,
San
let me
Diego
be clear.
State.
There's no such thing as a lock. There's no such thing as a guarantee. I don't want to be like some others at a different network that got into a little trouble saying those things.
Listen, the reality is anytime someone says it's a lock or it's a guarantee, you lose the bet.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, we all know in the gambling world, there is no such thing. And anybody who thinks otherwise just doesn't understand how gambling works. Uh-oh.
I got breaking news in the NFL. Let me just make sure that this is a blue check mark here. And let me make sure
a real blue check mark.
That this is a real blue check mark, and this is a real Adam Schefter. Yes, it is. We have a trade in the NFL. The Philadelphia Eagles are sending edge rusher, college classmate of mine, personal friend, Hassan Reddick, to the New York Jets for a conditional 2026 third-round pick that could be a second pick, sources tell ESPN. The 2026 pick becomes a second pick if Reddick has 67.5% playing time this season and has 10 or more sacks. If not, it's a 2023 third-rounder. I know the Eagles had contract issues with Hassan Reddick. You want a new deal. They weren't going to give him one. They got the deal done with Sweat. They got your guy from the Jets in Bryce Huff. But this is a phenomenal move for the Jets. Hassan Reddick, he has had 10-plus sacks in 4 straight seasons, I want to say. And he is an athletic edge rusher. This was a guy that going into the Super Bowl 2 years ago, he was a legitimate Super Bowl MVP, like dark horse pick. And he was great for them in that playoff run where he knocked out 2 quarterbacks for the 49ers. He was great against the Giants in that opening round playoff game for the Eagles in the divisional round. This is a good move for the Jets. This is a good move for the Jets. And you know what?
They're giving up a lot, though. I mean, he's clearly going to be playing 67%.
What do you mean?
A second-round pick for Hassan Reddick?
You're all in. The Jets are all in. They have a limited window here with Aaron Rodgers. The Jets have to be all in. This is a move that indicates the Jets are all in. This is a good move for the New York Jets. See, this is what annoys the crap out of me. There's a lot of times where we obsess over these draft picks. Like, who are the Jets picking in the second round that's going to be better than Hassan Reddick? The odds are that's not going to be the case. I commend the New York Jets because they missed out on Clowney. They missed out on Barrett, 2 older veteran pass rushers. This is the move. This is the pivot by Joe Douglas. Phenomenal move. Why, you're not on board with this?
No, listen, as a former Jets fan, yeah, it's a nice move. They've got a lot on that defensive side of the ball, right? They drafted Will McDonald in the first round. They got Jermaine Johnson.
Reddick better.
In the first round. They've got, obviously, Quinnen Williams, and they got C.J. Mosley. They got a lot of, defensive linemen and linebackers that can get at the quarterback. So it's going to add to a great rotation. He's probably going to be their number one guy as far as getting to the quarterback. Bryce Huff I thought was good, but I thought he was overvalued. The guy played 50% of the snaps, 40% of the snaps. So, yeah, it's a nice move for the Jets. I think it's adding a veteran. And you're right. At the end of the day, when you're all in on Aaron Rodgers, you give up a second-round pick. But here's the thing. Now they have the 10th pick of the draft, right? They can go Brock Bowers. They can go offensive tackle. Even though they signed 2 guys. They could go receiver.
Let's say.
They could go receiver if one of the big 3 is on the board.
Let's say this. We get quarterback, 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Chargers definitely going receiver.
You would think maybe Harbaugh, though, he likes to build with the big hog mollies up front. He could go with an offensive lineman, but probably would go with a wide receiver. But after that, if the Jets, let's say, either Neighbors or a Dunze are there at like 8, and you don't think they're going to get to you at 10, trade up. I have no problem trading up the 2 spots if I were the Jets to go make a move. I wouldn't. But, man, it is crazy because Hassan grew up in the Camden area, went to college at Temple. It was a walk-on, phenomenal story, top 15 pick by the Cardinals. They didn't use him right the first a few years, then finally used him right the last year. Then goes to Carolina, has a big-time season, then lands the big deal in Philadelphia. You go from a stretch where you're home for 2 years and you played really damn well. Like last year got off to a little bit of a slow start, but had surgery, had an injury, and that just evaporates, and the Eagles say, oh, we're going to move elsewhere, and we're going to prioritize other pass rushers. Like, you talked about it with Huff. He didn't play a ton of percentage of snaps. And Sweat's very good, and they got the deal done with Sweat. But once they signed Huff, it was either you get a deal done with Sweat or you get a deal done with Reddick, and they prioritize Sweat over Reddick. It's kind of stunning because when I look at the Eagles' defense, their best player the last 2 years on the defensive side of the ball was Hassan Reddick. So it's crazy that he's the odd man out, but it shows you in this league, it's not for long. Now, I think Hassan Reddick could still be an elite pass rusher for 2 or 3 more seasons, but the Eagles are moving on from him and electing to go elsewhere. Kind of stunning.
And it's one of the things you talk about a lot, how, at the end of the day, salary cap's not that big of a deal. They always seem to figure it out and work it out. This is what we're talking about, right? When you're a team like the Eagles, who has just built talent and just loaded your roster with talent everywhere, at the end of the day, once all that comes to a head, eventually you're going to have to make tough decisions and get rid of big players. And the 49ers are going to have to do it. It might be Brandon Ayuk. We don't know. It could be somebody else. They just lost Eric Armstead. They obviously lost out on Eric Kendricks. There's a lot of different pieces that you see. Once a roster gets really built up, you've got like a 2 or 3 year window with that roster. Outside of that, you start losing guys left and right. And that's what the NFL, that's why there's parity, because just when you think a team has hit that apex, they got to get rid of key players, key coaches, key whatever, and then they fall right back down.
And not only that, Howie Roseman, who's a wheeling and dealing GM, he has a team that still has a Super Bowl window, right? He made the big move this offseason, getting Saquon, getting Huff, bringing back C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Does Howie Roseman now use that second-round draft pick? Well, it's a conditional. So a third that could turn into a 2. Is there can they trade that pick? Can you trade a conditional draft pick where like you trade it to a team and you say, hey, this is a third, but it could turn into a 2, but maybe you use your other second or third round that you have that to maybe move up in the draft as well. So I wonder what else Howie Roseman has up his sleeve here, or if what you're saying, this is just, I don't want to say a cap casualty, but just a position overload casualty where you made other moves and then someone had to be the odd man out here.
And I'm just going to say it again. On paper, outside of the 49ers, the Jets roster rivals anybody else's in the NFL. On paper. The 49ers are the exception to the rule. The 49ers roster might be the best I've seen in 20 years. Outside of that, the Jets roster equals anybody else's in the NFL.
You are slobbering over the Jets roster. And I want to be clear when I say this.
On paper.
The Jets have a good roster. Good roster. I'm not saying that this is a great roster. Their offensive line hasn't been fixed in 5 years. I know what you're going to say. They brought back Moses, and they brought in Smith. But Smith's never healthy. So you are one injury away to Smith to being back in the same cluster that you were last year. And it's great that they brought in Mike Williams, but that's another guy that is incapable of staying healthy. So the Jets have a good defense. This move for Reddick is a great move, but we do overrate the Jets defense a tad little bit, where it's a very good defense. I'm not ready to say that they're great, but offensively, you need Rodgers to stay healthy, because Rodgers staying healthy will be the defense's best friend, because they've had garbage after garbage at the quarterback position. This is a good roster. The Eagles have a better roster, though. The 49ers have a better roster.
I'll give you the 49ers.
So, just for starters right there are teams that have a better roster than the Jets. The Jets they're a good team. They are a good team. But if you tell me the Jets missed the playoffs this year, I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever. You would be shocked if the Jets missed the playoffs?
The only way the Jets missed the playoffs this year is if multiple players get hurt, like key players get hurt, like Aaron Rodgers gets hurt again.
Or the AFC is just loaded.
Yeah, that's part of it too. But I think with this roster, as long as and again, on paper, there's a lot of question marks. Mike Williams gets hurt all the time. Tyron Smith is hurt all the time. Morgan Moses, he can either be really healthy or hurt a lot. So you just don't know. Elijah Vera Tucker's been hurt a lot. Aaron Rodgers is coming off an Achilles. So
it's a good roster. I'm not saying it's a bad roster.
Yeah, on the defensive side, their guys, for the most part, stay healthy. On the offensive side, there's a lot of injury questions. If, for the most part, the Jets stay healthy and they don't lose a bunch of really key players, yes, I think the Jets will absolutely make the playoffs, and I would be shocked if they missed the playoffs, barring, again, major injuries. I will put this Jets roster on paper up against the Eagles any day.
Stop.
Any day.
Stop. The Eagles have so much more offensive talent than the Jets, it's not even close. You have Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers.
And Breece Hall. And, most likely, Brock Bowers.
Oh, you don't even, you can't, see, this is what you can't say that they're getting Brock Bowers until they take him.
Fine, if they don't get Brock Bowers, you're going to have the second or third best tackle. And if they don't get the third best tackle, they're going to have a star wide receiver.
The Eagles have solidified weapons on offense. A.J. Brown is a top 5 receiver in the sport. Devontae Smith's one of the best number 2 wide receivers, could be a number 1 wide receiver on more than a handful of teams. 2 hands of, more than 2 handfuls of teams. Dallas Goedert is a criminally underrated tight end. They have Saquon Barkley. And, oh, yeah, here's the thing that you're missing.
He's an underrated tight end, but he's still like the 15th best tight end.
That's a stupid take by you, but whatever. And here's the thing. They have a solid offensive line. They still, even with...
And they just lost their Hall of Fame center.
Yeah, and guess what? They still have 3 or 4 Pro Bowlers on that offensive line.
And then we'll go to the defense. Fine. You know what? You want to say the Eagles' offense is slightly better than the Jets?
It's better.
A healthy Aaron Rodgers is also better than Jalen Hurts. So quarterback is significantly better.
Yeah, but it's not like Jalen Hurts is some scrub.
I'll also take Breece Hall over Saquon.
You see, this is why you are such a fraud. You know what? You see this Chiefs hat right here? You are not allowed to wear this. This is not allowed to be in the studio. It's nothing against Kansas City. But you keep on saying, I'm not a Jets fan anymore. I'm a Chiefs fan. You are such a Jet homer. I'm not telling you the Jets roster is bad. It's a very good roster. But the Eagles have accomplished things. The Jets, they wish they are the Eagles.
I'm not saying the Jets are a better team than the Eagles. I'm talking about...
You just said they had a better roster.
Roster is different than quality of team. Because you're talking about coaching, you're talking about leadership, you're talking about a variety of things. On paper, the Jets roster, player by player, position by position...
It's not better than the Eagles.
...is on par, if not better than the Eagles.
Know
and by the way, Dallas Goedert, 16th ranked tight end.
Yeah, he was hurt last year, you dummy. He was hurt last year. Anyone could go read stats. All right? And I'll tell you this. I wouldn't even say the Jets roster is better than Cleveland, too. Cleveland has a criminally underrated roster. The Jets have a better quarterback, but Cleveland has a better roster than the Jets. Josh Pastor joins us next. It is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Now back to the Zach Gelb Show.
All righty, rocking and rolling on this Friday. This is Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on CBS Sports Radio. Always love talking to my next guest, the former head coach of Georgia Tech and Memphis. That is Josh Pastner, kind enough to join us right now on CBS Sports Radio. Coach, always great to see you. Thanks so much for doing this, and how you been?
I've been doing great. Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed this year doing television and being part of the media and not coaching in a sense, but I do miss coaching, but I've loved being part of the media and doing television. I've had a blast this year. It's been fun and been able to watch a lot of great basketball along the way.
You know what it's like to have success. You know what it's like, obviously, naturally in coaching to not win these games. Arizona, everyone thought, and we know how close that school is to your heart, that they were going to get the job done last night. When you take a look at it the next day, what stood out to you the most in the disappointing performance by Arizona last evening?
Well, what I would tell you is in the tournament, what makes the tournament so fantastic is the thrill of victory and the agony and the abrupt ending in defeat, if that makes sense. Because when it's over, it's done with, and it's happens so fast, and it can be agonizing just on the fact alone that you're thinking Final Four, you're thinking national championship, you have this tremendous regular season, but Zach, what is everything is said? It's the road to the Final Four. All the marketing, all these slogans, it doesn't say the road to the regular season. It doesn't say the road to 28 wins. It doesn't say the road to a top 10 ranking. So everything's about the Final Four. And when you don't get there in a position like Arizona had, being a 2 seed, a great opportunity in the West, possibly going to Glendale, Arizona for the Final Four. Those things, you don't live those down. It makes you sick to your stomach. It makes you sick to your stomach for a long time. And look, Tommy Lloyd has done an incredible job at Arizona. He's won a whole heck of a lot of games. He's been in great positions. He'll be back there to have opportunities to be knocking on the doorstep of the Final Four. But there's no doubt this one's going to hurt for a long time because they were set up to have a great opportunity to get to Glendale, and who knows what could have happened.
In the first round, the two teams I were mystified by were obviously Auburn and Kentucky. And it's not that they just lost. It was how many easy opportunities that they had right at the rim, missing layups, missing dunks. And then you see that kind of carry over last night with not only Arizona, who couldn't hit a three, who couldn't hit a layup, but then also UNC with Baycott missing a dunk. I've never seen a tournament like this where so many teams have just missed so close to the basket, whether it's hitting the rim or just missing what I would think are easy layups, but are probably tougher than what people would think just watching on the couch.
Well, two things to your point. Number one is that dunk that Baycott missed yesterday or last night was a big miss. If you notice the time and the score, the situation, it was a big swing for him to miss that. I mean, that's demoralizing and deflating for the team, for the player. I mean, it can take the air out of you, and I think it somewhat did that to Carolina. But to the second point on what you said, and it's a very good observation by you, as you mentioned about Auburn, as you mentioned about Kentucky, as you mentioned Carolina, and in Arizona last night missed a lot of three-point shot attempts. But for example, to beat a team like UConn, or to beat a team like Purdue, or to beat a team like Houston, or to beat a Clemson or an Oakland or a Yale, or an Alabama, it's almost like a football analogy, Zach. You've got to control the line of scrimmage. And what's the line of scrimmage in basketball? You've got to win the points in the paint battle. You got to not turn it over, and you've got to win the rebounding battles on both ends, offensively and defensively. You've got to have a combination of all three, and then it starts with winning the points in the paint battle and not turning it over. And I guarantee you, if you looked on those games that you just mentioned, the teams with those losses, they did not control the line of scrimmage. And it's very similar in football. If you don't win the line of scrimmage, it's hard to win against an opponent that's darn near equal or a little better than you. And that's why to beat a UConn, to beat a Houston, to beat those type of teams, as I mentioned, teams are going to have to win the line of scrimmage. And what is the line of scrimmage in basketball? That's points in the paint, to your point, making layups, making short shots, controlling the boards, and then most importantly, not turning the ball over. Last night to start the game versus Arizona Clemson, I mean, Clemson had 11 points off of Arizona's turnovers right at the beginning part of the game. And those things end up just biting you in the rear when you're at that point and you're trying to advance, and every possession, it's so hard to win, and every possession is so magnified. It's all about, as you mentioned, basically controlling the line of scrimmage.
Josh Pastor here with us. UConn knew what the goal was before the season started, and they were absolutely dominant in the regular season. And when you have a long winning streak, I think the pressure only intensifies. I look back in February, I think the best thing to happen to them is that they got blown out up against Creighton. Not that they needed it, but I think it just kind of makes you focus more in as a program and actually gives a coach something that he can actually be critical about it. It's not just something that maybe you're exaggerated. What do you think that loss did for UConn? Because going into this tournament, I don't see how anyone beats them. And now, knowing they're in the Elite Eight, and I have a lot of respect for Brad Underwood in Illinois, I still don't know how anyone beats UConn.
Yeah, here's what I would tell you. You're right. That loss that they had versus Creighton was, they got kind of punched in the mouth, and I think it allowed them to kind of recenter and maybe re-listen to Coach Hurley. I mean, if that's in a way, I'm not a big believer that there's no good things coming out of losing when everyone says, well, but maybe for that situation based on that team, that could have been a positive. I think the only way UConn is not winning this tournament, and again, I've picked Houston to win the whole thing. I love Houston, but when you watch what UConn is doing, it's hard to pick against them. And initially, I thought even coming into this tournament, I thought Iowa State could give them a run for their money in the Elite Eight. Obviously, that's out with Iowa State losing. What I would tell you is this. I think the only way UConn is not winning is if it's a close game in the tournament, meaning that if it's under 3 minutes, under 2 minutes, and you're in a 1 or 2 possession game. Why is that? Because in the last 9 games of the NCAA tournament, they have completely destroyed, smashed teams. They've had all stress-free games. There's been no stress they've had. And now you're down in the final 3 games to do something that is to win a championship is rarefied air. To try to go back to back is in another stratosphere. And you're 3 games away from that. And they know it. They feel it. The players know it. They're on social media. You can't hide it from them. Coach Hurley knows it. They win another. He's going to the Hall of Fame. I mean, there's a lot at stake. The only way I don't think they're winning it is if it becomes a possession game, because they haven't been in one of those in the tournament, and they haven't been in one of those in a long time. In fact, Coach Hurley said last night in his press conference, we're just not real good in close games. That's why we just want to smash everybody in the margin of victory. So that's going to be the key. Can they handle a close game situation? Let me tell you this. I was part of the Arizona team that won the national championship in 1997. We were the best team coming back in 1998, and we lost to Utah in the Elite Eight to Rick Majerus. They played that triangle in 2. We couldn't make shots, and I say all that to say we got a little tight. We knew what was at stake, the pressure. So I think that's what UConn has to avoid, because they are so close to reaching that more than a rarefied air type of feat, something that's, as I mentioned, another universe to do that in sports in general. Forget just college basketball, just in sports in general, of all sports. So can a team hang close within 2 to 3 minutes in a possession game? Will UConn be able to handle that and not get themselves tight or wired in a way where they just feel the pressure and it doesn't go their direction?
Coach Josh Pastner here with us. It's kind of funny the way that you just threw it out there, because we were talking about Kentucky and Auburn, and right, those are the Cinderella teams, like an Oakland and a Yale, your traditional Cinderella teams. But it's almost, and I know it's not going to be looked at this way, but every team in this tournament to UConn, it's like a Cinderella story. And you know what it's like when you're in one of those games and you're in these neutral site. I know they're going to have everyone pulling for them in Boston, but you get into those games, and if the Cinderella team's alive with 5 minutes to go, the entire building flips and pulls for Cinderella. Like, I know that's disrespectful to say to Houston and Duke and all these other schools, but everyone in this tourney feels like Cinderella to UConn.
No, I think you're right. You're right on that. And what's interesting, me doing the work that I've done in TV, being up in the Northeast, the different networks that I've worked with, all the different networks, I've realized in the Northeast, there's a lot of Syracuse fans and there's a lot of UConn fans, and so you're 100% right. They're going to have the building filled with UConn fans for the majority part. However, if it gets tight and it comes down and things are not going their way, you're 100% right. Even though the crowd might be the minority of the Fighting Illini and the Illinois fans, they will be loud and can overtake that arena just based on the enthusiasm and excitement, because people like to see the champion knocked off. That's just the reality in sports. I mean, people want to, that's why it's so hard not only to win a championship, but to try to go back to back. And you're exactly right. So whether that happens in the Elite Eight, semifinals, or finals, but right now, UConn, I'm just telling you, I don't see the weakness of them other than what the situation is just if it's a close game, because Zach, they haven't. I mean, look at the margin of victories that they've had in the tournament over these last year and a half, the 2 years they've been in. It's just you don't.
But we said it the other day: is anyone going to be able to get within 10 points against them?
No, and then you've covered back. You know this. You always have to go through a game where it's like just a grind out. You're not playing well. It's an ugly game. You get, you're down like the last minute, and you miraculously. They haven't encountered that yet, which is incredible.
You know what it was? It was Northwestern. They didn't shoot well, and they still won by 20 points. That's how dominant they are. It's crazy.
That's a great point. I mean, it was over.
Yeah.
They didn't play well. I don't think they played well, and it was literally Danny Hurley had stress. He got his son in the game. You know what I mean? It was a stress-free game. I mean, it's not normal. This is not a normal occurrence of how UConn is accomplishing what they're accomplishing. So credit to Coach Hurley and his staff.
I want to ask you about Coach Cal at Kentucky. We know he's coming back. That was announced the other day. What does Cal need to change to win a championship again at Kentucky?
Well, look, I would tell you this. I was telling everyone, people are asking me left and right. I'm like, first of all, they're not firing Coach John Calipari. I mean, he's owed almost $34 million. And it was going to fire John Calipari, which was not happening, which would have been ludicrous to happen. It was impossible to happen. But I told people if they were going to let him go, that's a $50 million deal, because you have to pay John Calipari, then you've got to buy out a new coach, then you've got to pay the new coach, and not happening. That's $50 million when it's all said. No, not happening. So here's my thing. Look, everyone thought Kentucky had a real shot this year because of their talent level. There were some games where they were fantastic. But there's no doubt about it. And Jay Wright mentioned it on, after the Kentucky played, and other people have mentioned it. Look, he's not going to recruit the best high school players in America. And when people say, hey, don't recruit those guys, he's going to recruit those guys, because if he doesn't, they're the best players in America. Somebody's recruiting them. Duke's recruiting them. He's recruiting them. UConn's recruiting them. But he has to get older guys along with those guys that are really good shot makers. He's got to get shot makers from the perimeter. And I just think, look at a guy like Reed Shepherd. He's really good. He's probably a lottery pick, but he did not play real well in that game. He maybe froze up. He just didn't play well. He's a freshman. DJ Wagner the Wagner kid was the number one recruit in the country. He didn't look like he belonged on the floor versus Oakland, if that made sense. My point being is just, you've got to have older guys with him. I think that's the biggest thing. And people say, well, he's had that in the past. Yeah, but it's more so than the front court. He's got to have really good older perimeter guys. And I think he's going to make that adjustment in some of the guys that he can recruit this offseason that's in the portal. I would expect him to he knows that he's got to get back to the Final Four, and he's going to be as motivated as ever to do that for next season.
Last thing I'll ask you, Coach Josh Pastner, when you look at the 4 games tonight, NC State, Marquette, Gonzaga, Purdue, Duke, Houston, Creighton, Tennessee, using your coaching cap, what's your biggest takeaway? What's the biggest thing you're most excited to see play on out tonight?
Well, look, I think there's a lot of good games. I think the 2 games that stick out, of the 4, one is Purdue, Gonzaga. Gonzaga's playing really well, but just like UConn trying to win back-to-back, think about the pressure on Purdue. They've got the best player in the country in Zach Edey, 2-time National Player of the Year. We know what happened last year, them having the early exit. It's for Purdue. They back-to-back Big Ten champions. We all know in the basketball community, Matt Painter is one of the greats to do it. They've had such great success, but as I mentioned earlier, you are judged on what you do in the road to the Final Four in March. They've got to get to Glendale, Arizona. So there's a lot at stake, and taking advantage of having the very best player in college basketball on your team. Their 2 guards, Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, are older. They're not freshmen. Braden Smith's one of the top point guards in the country. I think watching that game is a big game, because Gonzaga has been playing at a high level. Because everyone picked McNeese State as a possible team that could beat them, and they kind of just have run through teams right now. Gonzaga in this late stretch here, they've been really, really good. And Purdue's been good. I mean, they demolished Utah State, which was a really good Utah State team. And the second game that I think that's really intriguing is NC State Marquette, because of 2 reasons. NC State was about 10 days ago. Kevin Keats, who I love dearly and should never have been on the hot seat, was on the hot seat.
Yeah. Now he's got an extension.
He might get a lifetime contract the way this is going. So and they're really hot right now. And I think Marquette's really good. But DJ Burns,
stud.
He's a unique, unorthodox, outside the box type of matchup because of the way he plays, where he catches the ball, how he can pass, his feet, his hands. So I think those two things are intriguing. Look, all 4 games are going to be really good, but I just those kind of storylines for tonight will be the most interesting for me.
Coach, always great to catch up with you. Appreciate the time. Thanks so much. Be well, all right?
Anytime. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
You got it. There he is, Coach Josh Pastner, joining us. An extensive breakdown of the games yesterday and the games coming up tonight. I can't wait personally for Creighton, Tennessee. I think that's going to be the best matchup of the 4 games this evening, and I kind of like Duke to pull off the upset against Houston. But as Luke Hancock was saying earlier, and even as Josh Pastner said, it's about controlling that line of scrimmage. We want to see how Duke's going to be from a physicality standpoint. We'll come on back with a news brief. Update time first. Here he is, the Act Man, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flag.
4 more teams will take a step closer to the Final Four tonight with the Sweet 16 continuing. The quartet of games starting with NC State and Marquette. The Wolfpack have been on a terrific roll. They needed to win the ACC tournament just to make it to the big dance and have reeled off 2 more wins since. Head coach Kevin Keats said it's been quite a ride.
You look at our team in different segments, you would say, man, they were good. You know, we remember we started off the ACC season 5-1, and then I think we had a couple of rough spots, and you know, it's weird. We brought in 8 different guys, and I think it took a little longer than I thought.
The other game in Dallas tonight features Houston and Duke. Another top seed also in action with Purdue meeting Gonzaga. The other part of that Midwest doubleheader features second-seeded Tennessee and Creighton, the 3rd seed. The Jets finally add a pass rusher this offseason, reportedly acquiring Hassan Reddick from the Eagles for a conditional 3rd-round pick in 2026. Baseball today, the Mets managed only 1 hit and fall to the Brewers by a score of 3-1. Starling Marte and Christian Yelich with home runs, and the Phillies lead the Braves 2-0 in the bottom of the 6th. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Hey, this is Bart Winkler. I've got a new show weeknights. Join me for the Bart Winkler Show starting at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, only on CBS Sports Radio.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
Time to ask the pros, where you, the listener, gets to ask us a question. It's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Simply tweet your question at CBS Sports Radio at Zach Gelb using the hashtag Ask the Pros. Be listening later in the show, and we might answer your question. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts. Let's start with Michael Penix Jr. He had a really good pro day. Is it like anything that we have to freak out about, though? Like, all these pro days, they're so idiotic. Like, if your opinion actually changes about a player from a pro day, you need help. But he did run a sub-4.6 40-yard dash. Let's listen up to Michael Penix Jr. and what NFL teams will get.
They're going to get a guy that's going to help lift the team up, help elevate everybody around them. That's what I feel like I've been able to do at two different places, and I've been super blessed to be able to have great players around me, to help up my game, continue to allow me to become better day in and day out. So I'm just super blessed, and they're going to get a winner.
It's weird because no one ever wants to fall in the draft, but Michael Penix Jr. is just getting projected as the 5th best quarterback in this draft class. I think he's better than that. I think falling for him, though, to kind of what he said on the back end, was not going to be the worst thing in the world. Because let's say Minnesota can't move up. If you could then land in Minnesota with Jefferson and Addison, win. If you could land in Seattle. I know they just traded for Sam Howell. They have Geno Smith. But if you could eventually land in Seattle and be with Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, win. Even the Raiders, who need a quarterback, and you still have Devontae Adams, win. Like, if you were the 3rd pick in the draft, you're going to the Patriots. The Patriots have nothing right now. So I don't think falling is going to be the worst thing for Michael Penix Jr., even though it is tough to handle. Let's listen up to Brian Kelly. He was talking about his family and one of his former players that is a part of the LSU family, as he just came out of nowhere with this accent, Brian Kelly. He was talking about Jaden Daniels, and he left us a little piece of information in this entire clip that we're going to play for you right now.
he is going to be so committed to taking care of himself that you're going to have to worry about size or he doesn't weigh enough. Lamar's done a pretty good job with his size. I think Mahomes, I wouldn't consider him a giant because he's going to get the ball out to the playmakers and make plays for Washington.
Well, he's making plays for Washington. So he's going from the Arizona State family to the LSU family to now the Washington Commanders. We are Commanders. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. And their family. That's what we're getting with Brian Kelly's former quarterback. Now, do you think he knows something, Samter? Does Brian Kelly know something when he says the Commanders and Jaden Daniels, or is that just him gassing up his player?
Either he knows something, or I had to hear the whole interview. Maybe he was just talking about Washington and just had it in his mind, and they asked him a question about Washington. I don't know, but it does sound like he knows something. And like Washington's the number 2 pick, so it's not like this is a team that has to make a move to get him. They have the number 2 pick, so like maybe they've just said, "Hey, Jaden, we're taking you number 2."
So Tari Eason hasn't played a game for the Rockets since January 1st. Rockets are on a 10-game win streak. They're right on the Warriors. And then Tari Eason released this video, "Warriors come out to play." And that's epic movie clip just haunts Michael Samter. Well, Draymond Green's never afraid to give an opinion. Draymond Green was on the Draymond Green Show via the Volume Network, and this is how he responded to it.
When I saw it, I wasn't surprised at all. I am a little surprised that he hasn't played in the game since January 1st. And so it's kind of tough to come out yelling, "Come out and play," and you're not going to play. It puts a lot of strain on your guys. Like, you can't get out there and help them.
Oh, that's rich. That is rich. And you want to know why? There's a lot of irony in that. Because Draymond, there's a lot of times you're missing from action, not because of injuries, just because of your stupid actions. And your teammates now have more pressure on them because of your stupidity. And I don't know. Did we just see this recently? Did Draymond just get ejected from a game and then he made Steph Curry cry because of the ejection? Does that not put more pressure on Steph Curry? So, man, the irony of Draymond Green being the messenger there on putting more pressure for stupid things being said on your teammates. Man, that is gold. Absolutely gold. Here is the worst commissioner in sports right now. It's a tie. Actually, it's a tie. It's him and Spineless Silver. But here is Rob Manfred on High Heat with Christopher Mad Dog Russo, where we know Manfred's only going on a spot that's an easy landing spot for him, where Russo will just compliment the commissioner all the time and then go after me, where he's like, "Oh, and the Zach Gelbs of the world always ripping Rob Manfred." Here is the commissioner on the Shohei Ohtani investigation.
It's really difficult for federal authorities to cooperate with us fully when they have their own ongoing investigation. So I think this is one where we'll have to proceed on our own.
Can you make people talk to you?
Look, we never have the kind of authority that law enforcement people have, but we managed to get these investigations done and find the facts, and I'm sure we will on this one.
And this could take a long time? You expect this months or short? What do you have there?
I hope short. I hope short, but I just don't know.
Rob Manfred is the kick the can down the road kind of commissioner. That's what he's going to do. He's going to kick the can down the road here because he doesn't want anything else to come out about Shohei Ohtani, because then if something does come out about Shohei Ohtani that's extremely negative, he's going to have to suspend the biggest star in the game. Here is Pat Kelsey, the new head coach of Louisville basketball. He was the 3rd choice for this job, and he made a little joke about it to try to win over the Louisville faithful.
I'm just praying that she doesn't hit the transfer portal. The good news, I was her 3rd choice, and that worked out really well, so I feel really good.
And he's talking about his wife. So that's some pretty good stuff. Oh, I was her 3rd choice, and, she didn't hit the transfer portal. It's a good job.
And he was the 3rd choice for Louisville.
Yeah, he was. Man, did I nail that hire? I said Scott Drew, Dusty May. No, then it will be Pat Kelsey. And that's exactly what happened. They had a little tango for a little bit with Richard Pitino. I don't know if Richard Pitino said no. I don't think he would say no. Or if that was just something that was floated out there and maybe you try to throw your name in there even though you're not going to get the job just because of the Louisville connections. He was there when his dad was the head basketball coach at Louisville. All righty, that's a news brief. Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio. We will take a time out. It'll be a 5-minute break. You're in a 5-minute break. And when we return, will Bryce Young have a bounce-back season for the Carolina Panthers? And when do you know when a quarterback is a bust? We've seen a lot of QBs be busts. When can you actually say it, though? We'll be back.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. 30 seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Alrighty, how we doing, boys and girls? It is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on CBS Sports Radio. I'll talk about Bryce Young and expectations for him coming up in just a bit. But during the break, I was reading this article, and it's PFF. Oh, excuse me, it's Pro Football Network. Pro Football Network has put out their top 10 head coach rankings. And I think there is one name in particular that is missing on this list. Santer, if I were to tell you, without giving you the coach's name, that you are a 2-time coach of the year in the last 5 years in the NFL, you would think that you would be on this top 10 list, right? 2 coach of the year awards in the last 5 years.
You would think, but postseason success plays a factor, so I would have to see what you did in the playoffs.
Okay, but even with that, it's in 5 years, 2 Coach of the Year awards. There's 10 spots. Like, if we're talking about the top 5, there could be, in theory, 5 different champions this year, and that coach not be a champion, but you still can't say that there should be 5 more coaches on top of that in front of the coach. Kevin Stefanski has won 2 Coach of the Year awards now. This past year, and then he won it when they were like 11 wins and they ended up getting to the second round of the playoffs after beating the Steelers. How Kevin Stefanski isn't considered a top 10 coach in the NFL is mind-boggling to me. And I'll say this, he's got to be the most disrespected head coach in the NFL right now. Kevin Stefanski, you could say, entered last season on the hot seat. And he lost his quarterback. He lost 3 other quarterbacks. Joe Flacco comes off the couch, and he made Joe Flacco look like elite Joe Flacco again. And I'll make this abundantly clear. If Deshaun Watson can't succeed this year, it's not because of Kevin Stefanski. I don't want Kevin Stefanski getting scapegoated for Deshaun Watson no longer being an elite quarterback, because the last time we saw Deshaun Watson be a top 7, top 8 quarterback in the league was in 2020. And it's been a long time, and most of it is Deshaun Watson's fault for everything he got caught up in off the field. I know he was already on his way out in Houston before all the allegations did pop up, and there were a lot of allegations, serious allegations. But he wasn't going to play another snap for Houston, and then him finding a new home got further delayed because of what did transpire and what the accusations were off the field. And this past year, we were supposed to see what Deshaun Watson could be, and he wasn't really able to knock off the rust because he got hurt again. So we have now seen 2021, 2022, 2023 all pass by, and we haven't seen Deshaun Watson really play any big number of games. So I'm at this point where with Stefanski, I think a lot of people just thought he was a guy. He's the guy for the Cleveland Browns. We're not talking about, the Patriots of the last 20 years or Kansas City and what they're going to do moving forward. We're not talking about franchises that have proud histories, like the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Green Bay Packers. We're talking about the Cleveland Browns. The here we go, Brownies. Here we go. And I said, here we go again. It's the Cleveland Browns, and it's 1st and 10. Here we go, Brownies. Here we go.
You just made me about $50. I had the over-under at 505, and it is now 504.42.
Yeah, I'm just saying. This is the I sound like Allen Iverson. We're talking about Cleveland. All right? We're talking about the Browns. This is not a team that has this rich tradition, or it's not this team that they have memorable moments. All right? I'm talking about the great fans of the Dog Pound. And they've made the playoffs twice since hiring Kevin Stefanski. I don't care that they got blown out in the postseason this year with Joe Flacco as their quarterback against the Texans. Don't care. This is a coach that has won 2 Coach of the Year awards with Cleveland, the Cleveland Browns. How he doesn't get more respect nationally is a joke. Like, I know we all like Mike McDaniel. You know, he's a great personality. He's a great character. He's a good coach. And his offenses have been humming the last 2 years in Miami. But how is Mike McDaniel 10th on this list? And Kevin Stefanski isn't on the list. And you know what? That's not even the one I'm most outraged about. Sean Payton, he's 8th. If this was Sean Payton 8 years ago, yeah, wonderful. But this is a list heading into 2024 and the 2024 season. Sean just ran Russell Wilson out of town, has a garbage roster, and has been a colossal pain in the ass. And I don't believe Sean's going to have this wonderful run in Denver. I get it. He's probably going to the Hall of Fame. I get it. He won a Super Bowl. He turned the Saints around. But people are going to trash on Belichick and bang on Belichick now all the time. Oh, what has he done without Tom Brady? Well, what has Sean Payton done without Drew Brees? He quit on the Saints. He went into retirement, then didn't get the Chargers job because the Chargers were stupid and they didn't move on from Brandon Staley. And he takes the Broncos job right away? This is a job that he takes right away? And right now, guess what you don't have in Denver? A quarterback. Guess what you didn't have at the end in New Orleans? A quarterback. You tried to sell us on Taysom Hill? You tried to sell us on Taysom Hill? I'm sorry. As we enter the 2024 season, Sean is not a top 10 coach.
So, on paper, based off of just on the top of our head, what have you done for me recently? You know, it's easy to knock Sean Payton because of all the drama that was around the Broncos. He took a 5-win team and made them an 8-win team. And that's with Russell Wilson being this problem that it was. Before that, we think about the end in New Orleans was kind of like a bad end. 9 wins, 12 wins, 13 wins, 13 wins, 11 wins. Those were his last 5 years in New Orleans. He has a Super Bowl title.
Yeah, but only one was without Drew Brees.
Sure, but again, he has a 620 win percentage, and you're right. Drew Brees is a big part of it, but he has 4, 8, 9 double-digit win seasons.
He's a good coach.
He was 8-9 last year with the Broncos. You said they have a trash roster and a quarterback who they basically benched midway through the season.
You think Sean Payton did a good job last year?
I'm not saying that at 8-9 with that roster. They got
off to a horrible start. He put lipstick on a pig. They started winning games. And the moment they started winning games, he went to the quarterback and he said, take the guarantees out of your contract. And Russ basically played well, gave him the finger, and then eventually got released.
Listen, he obviously has a plan moving forward. They won 8 games with a trash roster.
What plan is this?
I don't know. I'm not Sean Payton. Sean Payton is a much smarter man than I am.
But what plan do they have? They have one player on their roster right now after this offseason that's an untouchable, and that's Patrick Surtain. So
their plan is to obviously rebuild. They realized that Russell Wilson wasn't enough with that roster.
So let's do this. The Patriots have had some trash rosters recently. Then why don't we praise Bill Belichick for getting to the playoffs in the 1 year when their roster was trash and they had Mac Jones? Why don't we praise Bill Belichick for going 8-9 1 year recently? But everyone slams Belichick. Everyone says Belichick's a bozo without Tom Brady. Why don't we do that for Sean Payton? Now we praise him for going 9 wins and 8 wins? That's what we do?
First of all, I think the majority of people still call Bill Belichick the GOAT of coaching. And if he was still coaching this year, he'd be on that list. That's for damn sure.
But the last 2 years, he hasn't.
Well, the last 2 years he was 4-13, 8-9, and 7-9 before that playoff year.
You just praised Sean for going 8-9. You just praised him.
Right, but you're looking at this year that he had in Denver. If Belichick was coaching right now, he would be on that top 10 list, no doubt.
Okay.
Even if he went 4-13
He
last
also
year.
has 6 Super Bowls.
Right.
Sean has 1.
Sean Payton has 1. How many does Stefanski have? How many playoff wins does Stefanski have?
But hold on. You're well, technically he has 1, but he had COVID and he was out. But hold on. It's not apples to apples. He took over the Cleveland Browns. The Browns, before they hired Kevin Stefanski, were pumping out new coaches every 1 to 2 years. That we've never gone into a year where we said expectation for Kevin Stefanski is to be this great football team. And the 1 year when it actually was that, Baker Mayfield got hurt. He got hurt. But then this year, Deshaun Watson gets hurt. And they were down to their 5th quarterback. He's if you want to say Sean deserves to be on the list, fine. You can't tell me there's 10 better coaches right now in the NFL.
Well, let's run through, because I was going through all the coaches.
I'll give you the list.
So before you do that, I haven't looked at the list. I had 6 coaches who I would easily just put above Stefanski right away. Shanahan, McVay, Reed, both Harbaughs, and Tomlin.
Hold on. Shanahan, yes. McVay, yes. Reed, yes.
Jim and John, both Harbaughs. You have to. John Harbaugh has a Super Bowl, and he's been number 1 seed multiple times.
John, yes.
Jim, you have to.
Hold on. I'm the biggest Jim Harbaugh fan there is. All right? He personally thanked me in a text message when he left Michigan because of my vocal support that I have showed for the Wolverines program over the last few years. The thing, though, based off name and what he did in San Francisco, 3 out of the last 4 years, where he got to 3 NFC championship games and a Super Bowl, but he hasn't coached in the NFL in like almost a decade. And then he wins a national championship. But I can't have the college translate into the NFL here. I would still say yes, based off the reputation. Harbaugh, I'll give you that. And who was the last one?
Tomlin.
Yeah.
Okay. So at best, Stefanski is 7 at best. I have a list of 10 other coaches who some I think Stefanski's better than, some I think that he's not better than, and some that he's right along. Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur, Dan Campbell.
So slow down.
Well, I'll give you the list.
No. Just give me the name one by one. I'll tell you
Kevin O'Connell, Vikings.
No.
I think he's done a fantastic job, but okay.
Oh, he had 1 good year, and then they got exposed in the playoffs. How many playoff wins does he have? And then last year, his quarterback got hurt, and they were fine.
And he still won 7 games.
But hold on. Stefanski's quarterback got hurt. They won double-digit games and made the playoffs.
Much better roster.
Stefanski over O'Connell. Come on. It's not like the Vikings have this poor roster. They don't have a poor roster. Last year, they did not have a poor roster.
Compared to the Browns. But okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. Matt LaFleur.
I would go Stefanski over LaFleur, and I know that's going to be controversial. We just saw one incredible year from Matt LaFleur. It's his first year without Rodgers. I got to separate LaFleur with Rodgers and then LaFleur with Love. He was phenomenal.
He was better with Love than he was with Rodgers.
I give him a ton of credit for what LaFleur did, but right now when you have 2 Coach of the Year awards with the Cleveland Browns, I give the slight edge to Stefanski over LaFleur. I love LaFleur, though.
Dan Campbell,
I put over Stefanski. I say the Cleveland Browns, the one team that you could maybe put in front of the Cleveland Browns are the Detroit Lions in terms of how crazy that turnaround is.
Now,
Campbell.
I got 2 names I'm going to lump together.
So that means
right now we have Stefanski 8.
Wait, no. How many names did you originally list before Campbell?
6.
6? I thought you said 7. It was only 6?
I had 6, and then Campbell's now 7.
Okay, continue.
Okay. 2 names I'm going to lump together that you're going to clearly say no.
So I have 3 names that I have to say here.
Yes.
To move Stefanski off, which sometimes you say, how is this guy not a top 10 coach? And you go through the list, and it's like, maybe he's not. Yeah. But I'm not going to do that. Go ahead.
Mike McCarthy and Nick Sirianni. I know that both their stocks are very down. McCarthy's won a Super Bowl. Yes, he was with Aaron Rodgers, but he's won a Super Bowl. Nick Sirianni went to a Super Bowl.
Yeah. McCarthy, no. Absolutely not. Because if McCarthy has been fine, has been good in Dallas, but if your big thing for Stefanski is, well, what have you done in the postseason? What has McCarthy done in the postseason? And I know someone's going to say, well, he won a Super Bowl in Green Bay. Yes, he did. That was a long, long time ago. This is a list going into 2024. McCarthy's just a coach that's going to win. I don't even think they're going to win double-digit games this year. Noah McCarthy. Sirianni would have definitely been on my list last year, but with the failure to lead in that locker room, and you had one of the worst collapses I've ever seen, I could not put Sirianni in the top 10 right now.
I can see Sirianni. I can definitely understand. McCarthy, I still think you have to put ahead.
And his roster is great. The Browns have a phenomenal roster.
Yeah.
The Eagles have a better roster.
100%. So we discussed Sean Payton. I don't know where you stand. Yes, yay or nay on Sean Payton. I know initially you said no, but maybe my argument helped convince you. Still no.
No, and here's also the other thing. I think that is the coach right now in the NFL that he infuriates me more than any other coach. Just the arrogance. And I get it. He's won a lot. It's funny. He used to be a coach that I loved. I love Sean Payton. I don't anymore. I thought he was so insufferable this past year, so insufferable, that it made me change the way that I view him as a coach. And I don't think his style is going to work moving forward. It's not an all-time legacy thing. This is just going into 2024.
Cool. Here's another name that his stock is down because they collapsed last year. Doug Peterson has the Super Bowl ring.
I will put Doug in front of Stefanski.
Okay. Zach Taylor, what he's done with the Bengals, turning the Bengals around. You think the Browns are a moribund franchise. The Bengals might be worse, and Zach Taylor took them to the Super Bowl and almost won it.
Joe Burrow took him to the Super Bowl. When Joe Burrow gets hurt, what happens to Zach Taylor? Hot seat.
Well, you know what, though? Even without Joe Burrow, they finished 9-8 with Jake Browning.
He did a good job.
9-8 without Joe Burrow.
No,
so,
he did a fine job, but I don't look at the success of the Bengals, and the first thing I think about is Zach Taylor.
Okay, now here comes the two that are going to either keep or push him out of the top 10. The first one, again, stock down, but he has done an amazing job in Buffalo, Sean McDermott. He has done such a great job in Buffalo. Falling, and it's like MJ and the Pistons, right?
Yeah.
Where you just lose to the championship team. It's like the Rockets and the Warriors, or the Suns and the Spurs.
In the mix.
Right? You're just losing to the team that just keeps winning. You're just the Bills, all they do is lose to the Chiefs. It's nothing to everyone loses to the Chiefs in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'll put McDermott on there. So right now we have Reed in no order. Reed, Tomlin, both Harbaughs. Who else are we missing?
Shanahan, McVay. Dan Campbell, Doug Peterson, Sean McDermott. So right now Stefanski is 10.
Do you have any other names?
One more name. And you kind of said it before, so I kind of know where you're going with this.
Is this the kill shot? Is this the Samter kill shot?
This, to me, this guy is above Stefanski. I love this guy, but I don't think you do as much as I do. It's Mike McDaniel.
No. Mike McDaniel. I like Mike. I do. Not better than... I'm not more impressed with McDaniel than I am with Stefanski compared to Miami and Cleveland. I'm just not. So, can I give you their list, though?
Yeah, let me hear it. So you have Stefanski 10 on your list.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you're making this big deal about him not being in the top 10. You have him 10.
Yeah, he has to be a top 10 coach.
But there were enough names that, like, you can make the argument if he's 11, fine. You had him 4.
You know what? They do full rankings. I am looking at this for the first time. Where do you think they put Stefanski?
My hope is 11 or 12 at the very lowest. Because there's a couple names that I disagree with you on this list, but I'll say 11 or 12.
They put him at 11.
See, then I'm fine with that. Do they have McCarthy ahead of him?
No.
Okay.
They have Zach Taylor behind him, DeMeco Ryans behind him, Sean McDermott behind him, Peterson behind him, Sirianni behind him, O'Connell behind him, McCarthy. McCarthy's 18th.
Oh, his stock is down.
Who do you think is 32nd? I always find these lists because you have so many they did first-year head coaches, so they... All right, then who do you think is 28th is the spot with knowing that we have anything to judge?
Are we going Saleh, Eberflus?
Saleh's 27th. 28? Mickey Loomis thinks this guy's going to be the next
Belichick.
God,
I can't stand Dennis Allen.
It's Dennis Allen. The Pro Football Network list, top 10 coaches. Andy Reid, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, John Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin. That's the top 5. Jim Harbaugh, 6. Matt LaFleur, 7. Sean Payton, 8. Dan Campbell, 9. Mike McDaniel in at number 10.
So I would have agreed
We're
about
putting a
Peyton
coach
and
that hits a
McDaniel.
G pen on the sideline in at number 10.
Yeah, I would have had Peyton and McDaniel above Stefanski. I would have had McDermott above Stefanski.
Mm-hmm.
I probably would have had Stefanski above LaFleur.
So can I ask you this?
I would have had Stefanski 11 or 12, right around that same
What
range.
does Kevin Stefanski need to do to get more respect? And don't give me the obvious answer of he needs to win a Super Bowl.
I don't think he needs to win a Super Bowl. First, I agree with you, though. I
He's
think
the
that
head coach of
completely
Cleveland.
He's been on the hot seat every year, and all he does is win. So I'm with you.
Okay.
I think that Stefanski is highly underrated. Now, don't forget, the 2 years that he didn't win Coach of the Year, he was 8-9 and 7-10. So it's not like he's been blowing the doors off all 4 years that he's been in Cleveland. He had 2 very good years and 2 subpar years.
But he's never had a sustained quarterback.
This is very true. So this is why I give him love and why I think that he gets underappreciated. But
And also, let's not just make this just a quarterback. He lost Nick Chubb as well this year.
But he also has a stud defense and maybe the best defensive player in all of football. Good offensive line. Before Chubb got hurt, he had Chubb. He's had good receivers.
But
for
that's
a
the
while.
other thing. They missed both their tackles this year. That team was gutted with injuries.
Yeah, no, this year was one of the best coaching jobs we've seen in a long time from an NFL head coach, based on what he did.
So let's recap here, because sometimes we do these segments where it's just impromptu stuff, and then you have a reaction, and you go through it, and you talk about it, and you have some substance. He should be in the top 10. To their credit, they put him at 11, so it's not like a tremendous oversight. But I still feel as if he's, like, put it this way. If I put a poll question out there, is Kevin Stefanski a top 10 coach? I think it is like 80% of the people would say no. And to me, that is too large of a number because I think he's a top 10 coach. And a lot of those guys on that list, it's because of reputation and what they've done in the league. And it's not what have they done for me recently. And that's the biggest problem when you do these lists. Because some guys are grandfathered in, and it's like, what have you done for me recently? If we're doing a list, though, of the top coaches going into 2024, that's always the dilemma with the coaching list.
And the one thing I'll say about lists is oftentimes you hear a list and you're like, oh, there's no way. When I threw out Jason Tatum is closer to that number 10 range in the NBA, people are like, oh, you're crazy.
You're still on that.
But but what I'm saying is when you start actually going through the names and you start actually going through the players, then you start to say, okay, well, you know what? Maybe he does belong in that 9, 10, 11 range as opposed to being a top 5, top 6 coach. So I think when you think about a list, a name pops into your head, you have an immediate reaction, but you have to actually go through name by name and kind of figure out where that person fits before you can actually make that snap judgment and that snap reaction.
I would say the highest you could put Stefanski after this conversation is like 8, I would say. The lowest, he's still got to be in the top 10 for me. He has to be in the top 2 Coach of the Year awards in Cleveland. Imagine 5 years ago I said to the Browns fan base, I know we got to take a break, that Stefanski or any coach you hire would win 2 Coach of the Year awards. And there would be a lot of years that this is the first year it doesn't feel like he's on the hot seat. And all Deshaun Watson has to say, even if he gets his contract extension or not, all Deshaun Watson has to say is, I'm not a big fan of Stefanski. And he could be fired after this season. That's all I'm saying is this. I don't care what the Browns do this year. I don't care if the Browns implode, they only win 6 games. He should not be fired at the end of this season. Because that is more of a displayment of what Deshaun Watson can no longer do rather than what Kevin Stefanski can't do. Coming on back, Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Now back to the Zach Gelb Show.
Alrighty, this is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. So Bryce Young, you saw a player when he entered the league, supposed to be the next guy. And then a year later, everyone gives the take of, how the heck did the Carolina Panthers take Bryce Young over CJ Stroud? At the time, I thought Bryce Young was the better quarterback. I did. A lot of people thought Bryce Young was the better quarterback. Now, you could fault the Panthers' process because there is a lot of belief that David Tepper wanted Bryce Young and McCown and Reich, who were there, they wanted CJ Stroud. But a year later, I do think it's unfair to Bryce Young to call him a bust. Because the Panthers situation was one of the more toxic situations I could ever remember in a while. The owner, clown. The offensive line last year, non-existent. Your best wide receiver was Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen's a good player. This is not Adam Thielen, though, of 3-4 years ago. They had no run game. Miles Sanders, I said this when they signed him. He was a product of Philadelphia. Miles Sanders is not a good running back in this league. So I look at the Bryce Young situation. What other quarterback could you put in to that spot that would have succeeded? Like, if C.J. Stroud, who didn't have the greatest organization in the world, but he had a competent head coach, and he at least had Nico Collins, who's solid, and you had a good defense, Will Anderson emerged at the end of the year. You know, C.J. Stroud, not taking anything away from him, he uplifted everyone in that organization. He is a leader. He's phenomenal. He's great. Can't say enough. This is not a bashing C.J. Stroud. But if C.J. Stroud was in Carolina last year, what does he do? We're not talking about C.J. Stroud the way that we are now if he was in Carolina. And it just shows you, even though the Texans weren't this marvelous situation, they were better, and they could give you a chance to at least swim in Houston, where anyone that you put in last year in Carolina was going to sink. And they were going to fail miserably. So I'm not ready to say Bryce Young is a bust. And I think, Samter, we need a little bit more patience, but because of how important the rookie contract is now, and you got to take advantage in those first 4 or 5 years before the extension does kick in, that you would hope you would be paying someone that you take eventually down the road with the number 1 overall pick. We've seen a new structure in the NFL, and we've seen guys like the Jets quickly give up on Zach Wilson, quickly give up on Sam Darnold. The 49ers quickly give up on Trey Lance. Even when a team like the Eagles pay Carson Wentz, they gave up on him. And some of those situations, it's deserved to give up on the player. But when you're on that rookie deal, we've now seen something like we've never seen before, where you have a laundry list of teams that have just given up on the quarterback. And I think you need to have 2 years of seeing that it can't work until you make that decision. And there's other external factors, like sometimes the Niners, they didn't have 2 years to figure it out with Trey Lance. They had a team that was ready to win a Super Bowl, and you couldn't have the quarterback be the detriment to the team. But for Bryce Young, he doesn't make any improvements this year. I'm ready to call him a bust. But right now, I'm not ready to do so. And I'm not even asking him this year to be great. But you got to give me some tangible moments. Like, I did some local radio in New York when it was a big conversation about Sam Darnold and should the Jets keep Sam Darnold. And anytime I got into it with fans and callers, I would say, okay, you're in the camp of keeping Sam Darnold. Fine. Give me the tangible moments. What are the 2 or 3 memories that you have of Sam Darnold where you could say, aha, I see something?
Pick 6 in his first game.
Against the Lions. Very good.
First throw.
And like really outside of a good performance against the Cowboys, I think it was, whenever I asked that question, they were like, yeah, but you can't move on from him. Okay, why? And sometimes, you know, I can get misconstrued at times. Like, yes, I am loud, I am passionate, I'm opinionated. And sometimes, just because by nature that I'm loud, people think I'm always combative. But when you are on the air and you are calling into this show, you are essentially performing for our listeners. You are talking to our audience. So if you're not ready to go, or if you can't give us something that makes sense, we're going to press you to make your point. And then sometimes you have some people like, oh, Zach's being mean, or Zach is going after someone. There's sometimes I'll go after callers. But it's not just out of nowhere. And I appreciate when people call. Obviously, I appreciate when people listen. But you got to be ready to go. And when you can't give the argument and you can't answer the question, why should I continue interacting on the air? We only get 3 hours. People all the time When they find out what I do, they're like, you talk 3 hours a day. It used to be 4. And I've done Sundays for 8 hours. Ack's done them too.
And you had to do 4 hours with Hickey.
That's not nice.
I didn't have the headphones on. What was that?
Samter said, and I had to do 4 hours with Ryan Hickey. So,
that's very not nice.
Yeah. And people say I'm the mean one.
Yeah.
How about Samter?
Well, no, Ack threw his headphones on. He thinks I'm insulting him. I would never go after Ack.
I'm just saying that wasn't nice. I think that was uncalled for.
But to my point here, we value the hours and the time that we have, even though people could think it's a lot of hours and it's a lot of talking. But when you call in and you can't give a point, and I'm okay with saying I'm wrong. I'm okay with a different line of thinking. And I think those conversations are healthy. But when you're so confident about someone and you have nothing to back up your claim, why should I continue to allow you to have the conversation? Like, for example, you call in and you say, Bryce Young is a bust, he sucks. Okay, my natural reaction is why? And last year was terrible. Last year was miserable. But I don't think it's fair to say that he's a bust yet because no one was succeeding in that situation last year. Tom Brady doesn't even succeed in Carolina last year. And I argued about this with people when they said Tom Brady was done in New England his final year. And done in the NFL. And I said, did you watch games? Because if you watched the games, you had Julian Edelman on one leg. That was his best weapon. And you had an offensive line that was a turnstile in Penn Station pre-COVID. All right? That's how bad the offensive line was. No quarterback was succeeding there. And they still made the playoffs. So when you argue something, all I ask for is to have something to back up your claim. That's all I ask for. So when I got into that bus conversation in New York about Sam Darnold, who I thought the Jets should have traded from, when anyone tried to defend Sam, what were the moments that we've seen? And you could be in a bad organization and still show signs that you can succeed. But if you don't give me at least a few moments, and that's what Bryce Young needs to do this year. I don't care about the wins and losses. He needs to give me 5 moments where I could say, okay, that could be the guy. And if he doesn't, then I'm not going to sit here next year and say that he isn't a bust. But right now I'm going to say he isn't a bust. Terrible season. But with that owner, firing coaches, no offensive line, I don't think anyone was succeeding there. And no offense to Adam Thielen. I love Adam Thielen. But when he's your best wide receiver, you're not really giving your quarterback a shot to succeed. And Thielen was good last year. It wasn't bad. It's not going after Adam Thielen, but that's not an ideal number 1 wide receiver for a young quarterback. All right, we'll come on back with some onside, offside. Let's get to the latest CBS Sports Radio update with the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
Well, the Sweet 16 continues tonight with 4 more games, including 2 top seeds. Houston, number 1 in the South, takes on Duke in Dallas. The Cougars has advanced this far for the 5th straight year. The school's best run since the Phi Slamma Jamma days. Head coach Kelvin Sampson told CBS Sports Radio his latest team, though, hasn't had it easy.
I don't know who said this, but it's true. Comparison is the thief of joy. Because I've enjoyed every team I've ever coached here. But this group probably has had the most adversity other than the very first team I had.
Also tonight, Purdue takes on Gonzaga. 2nd-seeded Tennessee meets the region's 3rd seed Creighton. The Blue Jays needed double overtime to get past Oregon. And NC State goes for its 8th straight win against 2nd-seeded Marquette. The Jets get the pass rusher that they've been looking for after coming up short on Jadeveon Clowney, reportedly acquiring Hassan Reddick from the Eagles for a conditional 3rd-round pick in 2026. Baseball today, the Braves have broken it open, 2 in the 7th and 7 in the 8th. They lead the Phillies by a score of 9-2. Greg Olson is driven in 3, and it was the Brewers over the Mets 3-1. I'm Rich Ackerman.
You're listening to CBS Sports Radio, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all live, all the time.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. 4 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick. From the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
It's time to answer Ask the Pros question of the day. It's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Jason in Milwaukee says, Zach, who are the teams tonight in the Sweet 16 that you like to win outright? You can submit a question by tweeting at CBS Sports Radio at Zach Gelb using the hashtag Ask the Pros. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts. Outright winners tonight. I like Marquette over NC State. I like Purdue over Gonzaga. I think Duke pulls off the upset against Houston. What a sentence that is. And I also like Creighton tonight. That spread's jumped. Tennessee today was a 1.5-point favorite. Now it's 3.5. I like Creighton tonight. I just think they're a more well-rounded team, especially in their starting five with 4 of their 5 starting players. Tennessee's really damn good with Dalton Connect, but I'll take Creighton. So Creighton, Duke, Purdue, and Marquette to win tonight. Let's get to a little onside-offside.
Zach's taking on the most polarizing issues in sports. Which side of the line of scrimmage will he end up on?
Offside. Defense number 69.
It's Onsides, Offsides with Zach Gelb on CBS Sports Radio.
Alrighty. What do we got, Samter?
One of the top remaining free agents, Davion Clowney, officially signed with the Panthers. Now, Clowney was the number 1 overall pick in the 2014 draft after his stellar career at South Carolina, making 3 Pro Bowls and amassing 52.5 sacks in 126 games. So onside, offside, Clowney's career has been a disappointment considering his expectations.
Wouldn't call him a bust, wouldn't say he's had a bad career, but he was supposed to be like transcendent. He was supposed to be like a generational type of player, and he hasn't been that. So to say his career has been a disappointment considering the expectations of being that great stud, yeah, I would say on sides. By the way, the first 4 picks of that draft, Jadeveon Clowney, Greg Robinson, Blake Bortles, and Sammy Watkins. Then Khalil Mack ended up going 5. A few picks later, Mike Evans did go in at 7.
Yikes. Now, your boy, Bill Belichick, might not have a job while his son does, but the former Pats coach is reportedly working on a book. Now, after some negativity and some bad commentary from that Dynasty documentary, many hope Belichick will offer his rebuttal in the book, although reports early on say that he probably won't go that route in his memoir. Now, onside, offside, you'd be more interested in a book from Belichick about his life than one from Brady about his life.
Ooh, good question. I'm going to go offside, and the reason why I'm going offside is this. I don't think a Belichick book right now, I'll read it, but it's not something I'm dying to read because I wonder how truthful he is going to be, still knowing he wants to coach again. Brady, we know, is never playing again. And I think when you're never playing again and you get that out of your mind that you're not going to coach, so he's going to be, a minority owner eventually of the Raiders and be an analyst on Fox. I think that the person that doesn't have kind of bumper lanes up is the better read and the better listen. Now, Belichick has a book coming out. If this ends up happening, we need to do the audio version of the book. Chapter 1. All right, I got my start as a kid, as a ball boy. I need a Belichick audio version.
I mean, I will be honest. I listen to a lot of books on tape, and they're usually like 16, 17 hours long. A Belichick reading his own book at his pace would take about 7 days. So, no thank you.
Read that to your child. Put her to sleep very easily.
I just fell asleep listening to you speak for 10 seconds.
Oh, that's not nice. So you'd be more interested in a book from Belichick about his life than one from Brady. I would go offside.
Offside.
Now, the 49ers lost in the Super Bowl, and questions linger whether they'll have to move on from leading wideout Brandon Ayuk. The Niners missed out on former All-Pro Eric Kendricks, who spurned them for Dallas, and lost starter Eric Armstead, who bolted to Jacksonville after what he considered an insulting offer from San Fran.
They extended an offer to me of $6 million for a one-year deal with incentives to go up to like 8. When they sent that over, I did feel extremely disrespected. I don't feel that level of compensation is nowhere near the type of player that I am.
Now, I think he got 3 years, $43 from Jacksonville, so much bigger offer. Now, onside, offside, the rest of the NFC has actually caught up to the 49ers.
I'm saying onsides, and here's why. The 49ers have been really damn good. They haven't won anything, and it's not like they're in the Super Bowl every year. Like, the Lions are a good team this year. The Eagles beat them 2 years ago to get to the Super Bowl. Like, the 49ers are still the team to beat, but it's not like they're this team that they're all the way in front of the line and everyone else are like a bunch of scrubs. So I think there's enough teams that you go into this year, like you could call in and you could rank the Eagles, the 49ers, and the Lions, just those three teams in any order you want, and I can't yell at you, and I can't really press you that much on it. So, yeah, I'm going to say onsides on that one.
Now, Cavalier star Donovan Mitchell can become a free agent after next season, but owner Dan Gilbert told the AP this week, quote, "We think he will extend. He loves the situation in Cleveland because our players are very young and we're putting the core together. Onside, offside, Mitchell can win a title in Cleveland."
Offside. He can have great regular seasons and won't translate into postseason success. They just lost to the Knicks. I know the Knicks are a good team, but there's a lot of teams in the regular season that try hard and they're better than what we think they are, but then come postseason time, they get exposed. So you asked me, Mitchell can win a title in Cleveland. He will not have a moment where he gets on the court and goes, "Cleveland, this is for you." Won't happen in Cleveland with Donovan Mitchell offside.
Offside. We're going to skip around a little bit. Today was opening day for your Mets, who amassed exactly one hit in their 3-1 loss to the Brewers. At the game was our friend Evan Roberts of Evan and Tiki on WFAN, and our boss Spike Eskin was not happy.
He's still our boss?
Yeah, for another couple weeks.
Didn't he announce he was leaving like 5 months ago?
He was not happy that Evan skipped work to attend the game.
Since when are you not at work today?
It's opening day, bro. It's a holiday. I know you're new around here.
Bro.
I'm new around here. Come on, man.
Opening day, bro. This is what I do.
No. I'm not kidding. This is what I do. I knew you weren't going to be here yesterday, but it wasn't a full show. Nobody said anything to me about you not being here today.
You still here, or did you go away to Philadelphia?
It's a complete different thing when everybody's relying on you to host a radio show whose ratings, our livelihood is dependent on the success of this radio show, but you want to go to a baseball game.
I know you don't understand that talk show hosts can be fans, too. You have this idea of talk show hosts just giving big, stupid opinions and not giving a crap. I give a crap.
I'm glad that you will have your membership card to the Mets fan club, but we're doing work here. You either work here or you don't, Evan. I'll see you at 4. Hang up the phone on him. Hang up the phone. Hang up the phone. If Evan's not here by 4 o'clock, it's Tiki and Friends next week. That's all I got.
Wow.
Hang up the... That's his show. Evan's been here for like 40 years.
He basically fired him on the air.
He's the pro. I love Spike. I have a great relationship with Spike. I've known Spike longer than anyone in this building. But you're leaving. You don't get to hang up on the host on his show.
Now, onside, offside, you are okay with hosts missing shows to attend sporting events.
I thought about it. Weather sucked. The Mets sucked. So I ended up saying no. I think if it is beneficial to your show, I'm okay with it here and there. But if you're constantly missing, then it wouldn't be. I'm fine with Evan Roberts leaving or not showing up to his show today to go to Mets opening day. He's probably taking his kid too. Like I'm not going to crush him.
And he goes every year. All right, we'll try to sneak in one more.
But I don't like people. We're not going to sneak in one more.
Okay, then never
Here's
mind.
Why. Because don't hang up the phone. Don't fire me.
Cut off his mic. Botcher, cut off his mic.
Hey, Botcher, you cut off my microphone. That's the worst thing you'll ever do here. What I was about to say, what the heck was I now about to say?
But bringing your kids to a baseball game, missing a show?
What I don't like, though, and some people have done this here, that we need to have the number of opening days that people have attended. Like, there's one guy that works here, nice guy, Paul Rosenberg, I like him. He's like, 24 straight opening day that I've been to. Like, does anyone give a rat's ass if you've attended 24 straight opening days?
You know what? That I care about. Like, if you've been to like 5 or 6 in your life, I don't care. If you've been to 24 straight, that's impressive. I'm down for that.
Yeah, find the hobby. That's what I would say.
You're the one wearing a Mets shirt when your team got one hit today.
At least I'm still a fan of the team. I'm not like some frauds who leave their team and then go join another team because you can't handle it.
Let's go Chiefs.
I'm a man.
Cheers.
I'm a man.
How
I'm
about
almost
them
30. Take a little steal from Gundy. I'm a man. I'm 40. All right, a good show today. Big thanks to everybody. Big thanks to Josh Pastor, Luke Hancock, Botcher, Santer. Each and every one of you have a good weekend. We'll talk to you Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern. We out. Bye-bye. Peace.